Hello everyone, this is Remlays from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, we will take a brief look at the Warhammer 40,000 timeline. While this video will focus more on humanity's actions throughout the timeline, certain important Xenos events will also be documented throughout. So without further ado, let's begin. The following account is a chronicle of the history of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Because of how intricate and detailed the events documented are, only certain key events will be mentioned, which in turn will be expanded upon in future videos. In addition, there is also a small chance for potential inaccuracies of specific dates and events due to contradicting sources. The Ancient Past. Shortly after the birth of the universe, the ethereal and godlike creatures known as the C'tan would evolve, becoming the first sentient beings believed to ever exist. Date unknown. The race known simply as the Old Ones would make their appearance known, and would begin cultivating life upon many worlds. The Old Ones would also begin establishing the subspace network known as the Webway, allowing them to travel across the galaxy quickly and effortlessly. The Necrontyr would evolve, and would eventually begin colonizing the stars, creating a vast galactic empire. The Necrontyr would suffer from a series of internecine conflicts, so in an attempt to end these civil wars, the Necrontyr ruler, the Silent King, would declare war upon the Old Ones, hoping that this war would unify his people behind a common purpose. Despite their superior numbers and technology, the Necrontyr would be defeated time and time again by the Old Ones' superior psychic might, as well as their access to the Webway. These losses would create a series of schisms throughout Necrontyr society, leading to another series of civil wars. The C'tan would offer their allegiance to the Necrontyr against the Old Ones, promising them victory and immortality. The Silent King would agree to the terms of the C'tan, and physical bodies would be forged for them, while the Necrontyr would surrender their mortality, replacing their organic bodies with metallic shells. The Necrontyr henceforth become known as the Necrons. Circa 65 million years ago, the war between the Necrons and the Old Ones would begin again with greater intensity and ferocity. The Old Ones in response would create many other races to serve as soldiers in this conflict, including the Eldari, Jakero, and Krork. The war begins to grow more tumultuous as a result of the Old Ones and their creation's actions, emotions, and use of psychic power against the C'tan. Entities such as the Enslavers begin to appear like a plague of locusts. This combined with the losses incurred during their war with the Necrons results in the Old Ones becoming extinct. The Necrons, led by the last of the Silent Kings, would turn upon their C'tan masters, shattering them into shards and imprisoning and enslaving them, with the C'tan known as the Flayer being utterly destroyed. The Flayer's destruction instills the curse of the Flayer virus upon certain members of the Necron race. Fearing retribution from the Old Ones' creations, the Silent King then orders that the Necrons retreat to their tomb worlds and enter a period of stasis known as the Great Sleep. The Silent King then goes into a self-imposed exile. The Eldari would inherit much of the Old Ones' technology, including the Webway, whilst the Krork would begin their devolution into a race known as the Orcs. The emotions and psychic echoes of those races created by the Old Ones would begin to gestate within the warp, and would begin coalescing into beings that would one day become known as the Chaos Gods. Circa 500,000 years ago, the demon Draknien is created by the emotional turmoil caused by humanity's first act of murder. Circa 8700 BC, the first psykers would begin to appear within the human species, known amongst their kind as the Shamans. When the shamans begin to lose their mastery over the energies of the warp and learn of the slow creation of the Chaos Gods, the shamans undertake a ritual to create a being that will be powerful enough to challenge them, in order to protect their species from demonic predation. Circa 8000 BC, the future Emperor of Mankind is born within a fishing village upon the banks of the Sakaya River, believed by some to be the result of the ritual performed by the aforementioned shamans. M1. The period of time known as the Age of Terror begins. The Emperor would battle against a shard of the Khitan known as the Void Dragon. This Khitan would prove so powerful that the Emperor could not destroy it, and so he had it imprisoned. It will one day become known as the Dragon of Mars, as well as giving rise to the legend of St. George and the Dragon. M2. The Chaos Gods of Khorne, Tzeentch and Nurgle have all awoken to full consciousness within the warp by the end of Terra's Middle Ages. M3. Humanity begins to make massive leaps in scientific understanding and achievement. Mars is terraformed, and humanity begins to colonize the Sol system using sublight spacecraft, establishing colonies upon Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. Humanity begins to learn about the possibilities of the warp. M15. The Dark Age of technology begins. Mankind reaches its peak in technological development and scientific advancement. The Eldari Empire also reaches its height, holding sway over a large portion of the galaxy. M18. Humanity develops their first warp drives, allowing them to explore and spread across the galaxy at a much faster rate than previously thought possible. Geller fields are invented soon after to protect spacecraft from the dangers of warp travel. The navigator gene is artificially produced, leading to the creation of the abhuman strain known as navigators. These navigators allow ships to make more controlled warp jumps and traverse the depths of warp space for longer periods of time. Humanity makes contact with other Xenos races, and the first alien wars begin. Psykers begin slowly reappearing within the human species. The Eldari established the port city of Camorra within the bowels of the Webway to serve as a primary transport node. The Xenos race begins to grow more decadent and hedonistic, particularly upon their homeworlds within the galactic northwest. Circa M18. The Emperor travels to the world of Molech and discovers a Chaos Gate. He then enters it before re-emerging a few moments later, his already potent psychic abilities having become enhanced to a godlike degree. M19. The Navigator families become strong enough politically to become independent of the cartels that had previously claimed dominance over them. M22. The standard template construct is developed and perfected, allowing human colonies to develop all the technologies that they should ever need. This allows humanity to expand their influence throughout the galaxy at an even faster rate. Psykers become officially recognized by science as more and more begin to evolve throughout the various human colony worlds. Humanity makes unprecedented advancements in the field of artificial intelligence, creating self-aware robotic constructs known as the Men of Iron. M23. The Men of Iron rebel against their human masters, leading to a near-apocalyptic war known as the Cybernetic Revolt. The Men of Iron would be mostly destroyed during the rebellion, with those surviving specimens imprisoned within great stasis vaults. Following this war, artificial intelligence was outlawed by humanity, having been redubbed Abominable Intelligence. This would lead to the development of cybernetic creations known as servitors, fusions of biology and machinery as opposed to true AI. M24. Malkador the Sigillite is born. M25. The Age of Strife begins. The fourth major chaos god, Slaanesh, begins to take form within the warp thanks to the self-indulgent actions of the Eldari Empire. This creates an unparalleled number of warp storms, cutting off many planets from one another, leading to centuries of isolation, where the majority of these worlds would develop their own unique cultures. Many worlds still begin to degenerate and begin to experience periods of anarchy and civil war. Trade and communication between many worlds is cut off, and warp travel is made all but impossible. Xenos races such as the Orcs begin to launch a series of brutal raids upon many of these isolated worlds. Some of these human colonies would begin to evolve into new strains and species, due to being stranded within their new environments and unable to rely on previous resources brought in from off-world. This would then lead to the creation of various abhuman species such as Ogrins, Ratlings, and Squats. The Squat worlds manage to maintain communication with one another, and begin organising their mutual defence. These worlds colonised by the ancestors of the Squats become known within their sagas as the Home Worlds. Civilization upon Terra begins to degenerate and break down, eventually leading to the rise of the techno-barbarian warlords. Circa late M28, the Emperor reveals himself to humanity. With his legions of Thunder Warriors and the golden-clad warriors of the Custodes, the Emperor begins the Terran Unification Wars, conquering large portions of the globe and uniting many of the scattered tribes and nations under his rule. The Emperor begins the spread of his imperial truth, and begins a systematic destruction of all religious institutions upon Terra. Malcador the Sigillite joins the Emperor in his campaign, serving as his closest advisor and confidant. He eventually convinces the Emperor to adopt the title of Emperor. M29. The Emperor begins making preparations for the Primark project. The battle for Anatole Hive upon Terra takes place, resulting in the death of the soldier and psyker known as John Grammaticus. Grammaticus is then resurrected by Slaudar, an Eldari autarch in service to the mysterious organization known as the Cabal. As a result of Grammaticus's resurrection, he is transformed into a perpetual and becomes an agent of the Cabal. The Eldari grow more and more degenerate and self-gratifying. More individuals who oppose the degradation of their society begin to make their presence known. Many who oppose this downfall of their civilization undertake a great exodus, settling upon primitive worlds and adopting a simpler but harder way of life. These beings would become known as Exodites. Others who opposed such hedonistic behaviour throughout the Empire, seeing that such behaviour could only lead to doom and disaster, flee from their homeworlds upon great arcships known as Craft Worlds. Other Eldari still, such as the Harlequins, begin fleeing into the depths of the Webway. M30. The last church upon Terra is destroyed by the Emperor's forces. The Primarchs are created within the Emperor's gene labs, resulting in 20 beings fashioned from the Emperor's own genetic material. As the infant Primarchs grew within their gestation pods, a warp rift would open within the Emperor's laboratories and scatter the nascent Primarchs throughout the galaxy, depositing them upon different worlds where the majority would be adopted and raised by human parents. The Emperor would use the knowledge gleaned from the project, along with reserves of the Primarch's own genetic material, to create the first Space Marines. The majority of the Thunder Warriors would be slaughtered by the Custodes in order to make way for the Space Marines, though some would escape. The Eldari Empire falls and Slaanesh is born. Her birth tears a hole within the very fabric of reality, creating the warp rift known as the Eye of Terror, situated where the heart of the Eldari Empire once stood. Billions of Eldari are slain instantly as their souls are consumed by the Chaos God. Only the Craft Worlds, Exodite Worlds, and the realm of Camorra seemingly remain untouched. Those worlds at the epicenter become sucked into the warp and become transformed into Crone Worlds. As a result of her birth, the warp storms cease, making interstellar travel possible once more for humanity. The Age of Imperium begins. The Emperor begins making preparations for the Great Crusade, and orders the construction of the Astronomicon as well as the 20 Space Marine legions. The Space Marines of the 7th, 13th and 16th Legions pacify Luna, Terra's moon, annihilating all resistance by those upon it in just 6 hours. The Emperor makes planetfall upon Mars. An alliance between the Emperor's Imperium and the Mechanicum Empire of Mars is forged under the Treaty of Olympus, providing the Emperor's forces weaponry, technology, and manufactorums in exchange for a number of Navigator-strain abhumans, allowing the forces of Mars to traverse the galaxy once more. The Great Crusade begins to push past the fringes of the Sol system, and the Emperor is reunited with the first of his rediscovered gene sons, Horus Lupercal of the Lunar Wolves Legion. A few decades later, the Emperor becomes reunited with Leman Russ of the Space Wolves, one of the Lost Primarchs, and Ferrus Manus of the Iron Hands. A gene seed flaw known as the Blight begins to afflict the warriors of the 3rd Legion. Thanks to the combination of the flaw and near constant duty upon the front lines, only 200 warriors of the 3rd Legion survive by the time that they eventually become reunited with their Primarch. The Primark Roboute Guilliman, through a combination of diplomatic and militaristic actions, establishes an empire of 500 worlds. The Imperium attempts to bring the squat homeworlds into compliance, but face fierce resistance. These conflicts grow so fierce that the Imperium is forced to develop the Mark III pattern of power armor as a result. Treaties are eventually formed to end the conflict between the squats and the Imperium. The Emperor next reunites with Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children, Vulcan of the Salamanders, and Rogel Dawn of the Imperial Fists. Thanks to Fulgrim's reunion with his Legion, future recruits into the Legion become less susceptible to the Blight. Rogel Dawn gifts the Emperor with an ancient starship known as the Phalanx as a gift, but the Emperor graciously declines, instead decreeing that such a vessel should serve as the 7th Legion's flagship. The Primarchs Roboute Guilliman of the Ultramarines, Magnus the Red of the Thousand Suns, and Sanguinius of the Blood Angels are reunited with their respective legions. The 500-world empire of Guilliman is christened the Realm of Ultramar, and is brought into the Imperial fold. The Primarch Lionel Johnson is found living wild within the forests of Caliban by the Knights of the Order. Johnson is taken in by the knight known as Luther, who trains the Primarch in the art of combat, as well as educating the Primarch in numerous subjects. Lion soon rises to Supreme Commander of the Order, with Luther as his second in command, and the knights would wage a crusade to purge their world of the great beasts that plague the forests of Caliban. Angron of the World Eaters is found by a slaver upon the world of Nuceria. The Primarch has most of his brain replaced with machinery known as the Butcher's Nails, amplifying his aggression to nigh impossible levels, before the Primarch is forced into the life of a pit fighter. The Emperor then becomes reunited with Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels, Perturabo of the Iron Warriors, Mortarion of the Death Guard, and Lorgar of the Wordbearers. Luther of the Order and Lorgar's adoptive father, Cor Theron, are subjected to surgical alterations in order to join the Space Marine legions for the Great Crusade. Lionel Johnson eventually names Luther as the Steward of Caliban, leaving guardianship of the world to his friend. The seeds of jealousy are sown within Luther, and many of the Dark Angels who are forced into this exile upon Caliban. The Primarch Conrad Kurz single-handedly wages a campaign of terror upon the crime-ridden world of Nostramo, mercilessly slaughtering any who break the law. Within a few short years, the crime level within the city of Nostramo Quintus drops to near zero out of fear. The Emperor is then reunited with Jagatai Khan of the White Scars and Conrad Kurz of the Night Lords, who forsook the name Kurz and instead declared himself the Night Haunter. Angron leads a slave rebellion upon Nuceria, ransacking dozens of cities. as he prepared his last stand, the Emperor would arrive to return Angron to his legion, but Angron refused to join the Emperor's crusade. The Emperor would teleport Angron aboard his legion's flagship against his will, where in his anger he would slay many officers of his legion before being calmed by 8th Captain Khan. The world of Molech is brought into compliance. Those Primarchs who took part in the campaign have their memories of the conflict sealed away by the Emperor himself. Corvus Corax of the Raven Guard and the second lost Primarch would be recovered by the Emperor shortly thereafter. The Dueling Campaign, orchestrated by the Dark Angels and Space Wolves, is completed. Russ and Johnson engage in a short duel following its conclusion, leading to a tradition between the Dark Angels and Space Wolves to reenact this duel whenever their warriors meet again. The curse of the Flesh Change is seemingly cured within the Thousand Suns Legion, though this would later prove false and ostensibly cost the Primarch Magnus the Red his eye. The Rangdan Xenocides take place. The Xenos race known as the Rangdan inflict devastating casualties upon the Emperor's armies, including that of at least 50,000 Space Marines, before eventually being driven to extinction. The Alpha Legion makes their first documented appearance during this time, providing aid to Imperial forces. The two lost Primarchs would have their names and deeds erased from Imperial records for some unknown transgression, with some claiming that they were executed, while others maintaining that they were banished. The remaining 18 Primarchs each swear an oath to never speak of their lost brothers again, and all information regarding their erasure from history is lost. The Primarch Alpharius Omegon of the Alpha Legion is reunited with Imperial forces, though many contradicting accounts about the exact circumstances of this reunion exist. Sickened by events that occurred during his absence, Conrad Kurz would order that his homeworld of Nostramo be destroyed. The Raven Guard bring the Istvan system into compliance. Major Vardus Pral of the 11th Lastrian Rifles Imperial Army Regiment is appointed as the planetary governor of Istvan III. The Blood Angels and the Lunar Wolves undertake a joint campaign to exterminate a Xenos race known as the Nephilim upon the world of Melchior. Horus discovers the gene seed flaw of the Blood Angels Legion, the Red Thirst, but makes a vow to Sanguinius to never reveal the information of the flaw to the Emperor. Governor Vardus Pral forsakes his oath to the Emperor, and has Istvan III secede from the Imperium. The Wordbearers Legion brings the world of Kur into compliance. The populace begins to worship the Emperor as a god and the Wordbearers as his angels. Great temples and cathedrals are erected in their name. 6 decades later, the Ultramarines Legion would lay waste to the city of Monarchia from orbit. Lorgar, the Primarch of the Wordbearers, along with his legion, would be publicly reprimanded by the Emperor in front of Malcador the Sigillite and Roboute Guilliman, with the Emperor stating that he would not tolerate such worship or idolization. Lorgar would then begin a pilgrimage to find beings that not only deserved worship, but in fact demanded it, and in secret, after travelling to the world of Cadia and heading into the warp rift known as the Eye of Terror, he and his legion would fall to the worship of Chaos. 000 M31. The Ulanor campaign of the Great Crusade begins. The Emperor of Mankind, alongside the Primarchs Horus Lupercal of the Lunar Wolves, Roboute Guilliman of the Ultramarines, and Jagatai Khan of the White Scars, begin cleansing the Ulanor sector, seeking to destroy the empire of the notorious Orc warlord Erlak Erg. The conflict would end following Erlak's death at the hands of Horus. Following in the wake of the Imperium's victory, the Emperor announces before a vast congregation, which included several other Primarchs, his plan to return to Terra, which unbeknownst to the Primarchs was to begin overseeing the Emperor's secret Webway project. The Emperor then names Horus as War Master of the Imperium, leaving him to carry on the Great Crusade in the Emperor's name. The White Scars Legion begins pursuing the surviving Orcs into the Chondak system. The Emperor's Children Legion begins the cleansing of the world of Laren. Towards the end of the campaign, the Primarch Fulgrim finds a mysterious silver blade within a great temple and takes it as a trophy. This campaign would also eventually result in the Legion becoming corrupted and turning to the worship of Slaanesh several years later. Olympia, the homeworld of the Iron Warriors Legion, begins an open revolt following the death of Damocles, planetary governor and adoptive father of the Primarch Perturabo. Horus begins associating more with Erebus, the High Chaplain of the Wordbearers Legion, much to the concern of several of the Legion's officers. 001 M31. The continuing debate about the use of Psykers within the Space Marine Legions would lead to the Emperor holding the Council of Nicaea. Despite the impassioned pleas and arguments for the Legions to continue utilizing the Librarius by Magnus the Red, the Primarch of the psychically sensitive Thousand Suns Legion, and the White Scars Stormseer, Tagata Yasuge, the Emperor decrees that all Psykers within the Legions be returned to rank-and-file operations within their battle companies, and forbidden from wielding their powers. Magnus the Red is ordered to cease his studies of sorcery and the warp. The position of chaplain is introduced into the ranks of the Legions, whose task is primarily to ensure that the Emperor's decree is followed. A battle company of the Blood Angels Legion would attempt to purge the world known as Murder of the Xenos race known as the Megarachnids, but would be slaughtered by the Xenos. The world is later assaulted by forces of the Emperor's Children, Blood Angels, and eventually the Lunar Wolves Legions, who engage in a bitter conflict with the creatures. The Death Guard, Iron Hands, and Salamanders Legions would bring the world of 154-4 into compliance. Farseers of the enigmatic Eldari race use their powers to send visions and warnings to Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands, about future events. Ferrus ignores their pleas. Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders, renames the world to Caldera, and swears an oath to always ensure it is protected. Alpharius and Omegon of the Alpha Legion, thanks to the aid of the perpetual John Grammaticus, are shown a vision of the future by the Xenos organization known as the Cabal, before they would choose to side with Horus when the Horus Heresy eventually begins, in order to save the galaxy from being consumed by the powers of chaos at the cost of humanity's extinction. 002 M31. Ships belonging to the human civilization known as the Interrex would make peaceful contact with Horus in orbit of the world of Murder. The Interrex explained to Imperial forces that the world was intended to be a prison and reserved for the Megarachnids and other dangerous races. This would lead towards Horus and his Legion being invited to discuss political matters upon the Interrex's capital world of Zenobia Principis. In secret, Erebus steals a weapon known as the Anathame from the Interrex's Hall of Devices. Conflict would erupt between the Interrex and the Lunar Wolves, much to Horus's shock and dismay, forcing the Primarch and his Legion to flee. This would lead towards a campaign waged by the Lunar Wolves to exterminate the Interrex, believing that there was no longer any chance of establishing peace between the two factions. The Wordbearers Legion would shortly thereafter begin making plans to instigate a rebellion against the Emperor. 003 M31. Horus renames his Legion to the Sons of Horus, having been granted the right to do so by the Emperor after his victory at Ulanor. The Imperium loses all contact with the Istvan system. 004 M31. The Davin system declares independence from the Imperium. The planetary governor, Eugen Temba, is gifted the anaphane blade from Erebus and fortifies his position upon the moon orbiting the world of Davin Prime. The Sons of Horus Legion would be deployed, intent on making Davin once again compliant, but they find that the moon of Davin Prime had been transformed into a pestilential swamp. Horus and his forces are assaulted by plague zombies and plague-bearer demons, but Horus battles his way to Temba's location. Horus executes Temba, which banishes the zombies and demonic creatures, but becomes mortally wounded by the anatheme in the process. In their desperation to save the life of their Primarch, the Sons of Horus bring Horus's body to the service of Davin in order for him to be healed by the Chaos Cultists of the Serpent Lodge. Erebus uses this opportunity to sway Horus to chaotic corruption, and convince the War Master to revolt against the Emperor. Magnus the Red sends an astral projection to Horus in his comatose state in an attempt to convince his brother not to go through with this rebellion, but Horus would not be dissuaded. Magnus would break the Edict of Nicaea and use his sorcery to try and warn the Emperor of Horus's betrayal, but inadvertently and irreparably damages the Terran Webway project in the process, as well as creating a warp tear, allowing demons to flood into the Webway and besiege the Terran Webway gate. The Emperor, in his anger, refuses to heed Magnus's warnings, and orders for Leman Russ and the Space Wolves Legion to arrest Magnus and bring him to Terra to stand trial. Horus intercepts these orders and instructs that instead of apprehending Magnus, Russ was to instead destroy him. The Emperor is forced to utilize the Golden Throne to prevent the warp tear from engulfing the entire planet, which effectively removes the Emperor from influencing many events throughout the Horus Heresy. The Eldari Farseer Eldrad Ulthran would attempt to warn Fulgrim about the threat of chaos, but would discover too late that the seeds of chaotic corruption had been sown within the Emperor's children Primarch, thanks to the presence of the Leia Blade. The Iron Warriors Legion returned to their homeworld of Olympia to brutally quash the rebellion unfolding upon it, which ended when the Primarch Perturabo murders his own adoptive sister, who was one of the instigators of the Planetary Revolt. Horus instigates a 10-month-long conflict with the Aurasian technocracy after murdering Fabricator Consul Emorai Salignac. Horus would use this conflict to acquire various examples of long-lost STC technology in order to win the support of the Martian Mechanicum in his rebellion. Horus then begins plotting with those brothers that the War Master believes would support him within this conflict. Those who are deemed too loyal are instructed to undertake campaigns far from Terra in order to weaken the Loyalists once the rebellion begins. The Dark Angels are sent to the eastern fringes, and the Blood Angels disappear en route to the world of Cygnus Prime. The Space Wolves, alongside a contingent of the Legio Custodes and Sisters of Silence, launch an all-out assault upon Prospero, the homeworld of the Thousand Suns Legion. The conflict results in immense casualties on both sides, and Magnus the Red is broken and seemingly destroyed by Leman Russ, with his soul being fractured into shards. The surviving members of the Thousand Suns Legion, thanks to a ritual overseen by Azzik Araman, are teleported to a world known as the Planet of Sorcerers. 005 M31. The Horus Heresy begins. The Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, World Eaters, and Death Guard legions travel to the Istvan system under the pretense of bringing the system back into compliance. The traitors use this opportunity to purge their legions of any loyalist elements within their ranks by virus bombing the planet. This initially fails, leading to a conflict lasting several months between the loyalists and traitors, before the world would finally be subjected to another orbital bombardment. The loyalist Death Guard captain Nathaniel Garrow, alongside those Astartes under his command, commandeers the ship known as the Eisenstein and flees the conflict in order to reach Terra and warn the Emperor of Horus's betrayal. The Eisenstein would eventually make their way to Luna, Terra's moon, and Garrow would successfully deliver his warning to Rogel Dawn and Malkador, the Sigillite. Horus begins consolidating his forces upon Istvan V in preparation for the Loyalist counterattack. Fulgrim attempts to convince Ferrus Manus to join him in aiding Horus's rebellion, but the Iron Hands Primarch violently rebukes him and remains loyal to the Emperor. Malkador begins to lay the foundations for his Knights Errant, starting with Nathaniel Garrow. The Schism of Mars begins, as civil war erupts between those members of the Mechanicum who swore fealty to Horus's cause, including Fabricator General Kelbor Hal, and those who remain loyal to the Emperor and the Imperium. This conflict would last for over a year before Mars would fall under traitor control. This newly formed Dark Mechanicum unleashes a scrapcode virus that cripples nearly every independent forge and manufactorum upon the world. On the world of Caliban, Luther and many other disheartened members of the Dark Angels Legion begin defying their Primarch's orders and become the first of the Fallen Angels. 006 M31. Several battle companies of the Imperial Fist Legion, led by First Captain Sigismund, secure key supplies of weaponry and equipment from Mars. The Loyalist fabricator, Cain, becomes the Fabricator General of the newly founded Adeptus Mechanicus. 7 Space Marine legions enter the Istvan system and prepare to launch an assault upon Istvan V. The Drop Site Massacre takes place. The Raven Guard, Salamander, and Iron Hands legions suffer devastating losses, as the Night Lords, Alpha Legion, Wordbearers, and Iron Warriors reveal their true allegiances. Ferrus Manus is slain by Fulgrim. In his grief, Fulgrim allows the demon within the Leia blade to take possession of his body. The skull of Ferrus Manus is then delivered to Horus as a trophy. Vulcan is taken prisoner by Conrad Kurz, where he would be tortured continuously, while Corvus Corax, along with a number of Loyalist troops, would continue to wage a guerrilla war against the traitor legions before being rescued by a Raven Guard relief force led by Captain Bran. Alpha Legion operatives infiltrate the Raven Guard vessels as the remnants of Corax's forces make their way to Terra. Rogel Dawn issues a summons for all remaining Loyalist Primarchs to return to Terra, while Dawn begins to make preparations in order to reinforce the Imperial Palace against a future traitor assault. Loyalist Iron Warriors defend the fortress world of Shadenhold from traitor forces, holding it for over a year before the survivors led by the warsmith Barabbas Dantioch make their way towards the realm of Ultramar. Fulgrim, against Horus's orders, leads his legion to pillage a Mechanicum resource world. Concerned about their Primarch's behaviour, several high-ranking officers of the Emperor's Children Legion capture and torture their Primarch in an attempt to exorcise the demon from Fulgrim's body. They discover that Fulgrim had already done so at some undetermined point following the Drop Site Massacre. The Blood Angels reach Cygnus Prime and battle against a vast demonic horde. The genetic flaw of the Red First manifests itself on a large scale for the first time within the Legion. Sanguinius refuses the temptations offered to him and defeats the Bloodthirster known as Kabanda, banishing the Greater Demon back into the Warp. The Alpha Legion launches simultaneous attacks against the Space Wolves in the Aleksey system and the White Scars in the Chondak system. Due to the contradicting information regarding the events of the Great Crusade and Horus's betrayal, Jagatai Khan ignores Leman Russ's pleas for aid and Rogel Dawn's summons to return to Terra. The White Scars eventually break through the Alpha Legion blockade and travel to the devastated world of Prospero in order to seek proof of the civil war waging within the Imperium. Mars falls completely to the Dark Mechanicum, and the world becomes subsequently blockaded by Loyalist Imperial forces. 007 M31. Corvus Corax and the remainder of the Raven Guard Legion arrive within the Sol system. Corax requests the Emperor's aid in rebuilding his legion after the devastating losses they endured upon Istvan V. The Emperor, using Malkador as a conduit through which to communicate with his son, directs the Primarch to the location of the data and genetic material needed to not only rebuild his legion, but do so at a much faster rate. Corax and the Raven Guard return to their homeworld of Kiavar to begin recruitment for the legion once more, leading to the creation of the Raptors. Alpha Legion double agents steal the data and technology needed for this task while simultaneously sabotaging the Raptor project, transforming the new Astartes recruits for the Raven Guard into shambling monsters. The Word-Bearers launch an assault upon the world of Calth, catching the Loyalist Ultramarines Legion by surprise. The conflict results in the creation of the Ruinstorm, which separates the realm of Ultramar from the rest of the Imperium. Fulgrim and Perturabo travel into the Eye of Terror to seek a device known as the Angel Exterminatus. After coming into conflict with a number of Eldari, Fulgrim would attempt to use the power of the Angel Exterminatus to kill Perturabo. Perturabo survives, but Fulgrim achieves apotheosis, becoming a demon prince of the Chaos god Slanesh. Lorgar of the Word-Bearers and Angron of the World-Eaters lead a joint shadow crusade throughout the realm of Ultramar, massacring billions in order to feed the Ruinstorm. During this crusade, Lorgar would learn after a surprise attack by Drukhari raiders that Angron is destined to become the Blood God's son, and begins making preparations for future events. Angron returns to his world of origin, Nuceria, and, enraged by the local legends that called him a coward, has its population slaughtered. The Night Lord's Legion begins waging a campaign of terror and genocide throughout the eastern fringes, purely to keep the Dark Angel's Legion occupied. The Space Wolves Legion manages to break through the Alpha Legion blockade with a Aleksey's Nebula, and make their way back to Terra. The White Scars reach Prospero, and encounter the Loyalist Thousand Son, Revulavada. The Death Guard then launch an attack upon the White Scars after Jagatai Khan declares himself loyal to the Emperor, leading to several years of skirmishes between the two legions. Roboute Guilliman, out of sheer practical necessity, reinstates the Librarius within the Ultramarines Legion, in order to counteract the Warpcraft and demonic minions of the Word-Bearers. The Primarch also calls for any and all Loyalist forces that can to gather within the realm of Ultramar. 008 M41. The Officio Assassinorum deploys the first execution force, in an attempt to assassinate Horus upon the world of Dagonet, but the assassins would fail in their mission. Thanks to the combination of mass slaughter enacted throughout the Shadow Crusade and a ritual conducted by Lorgar, Angron is eventually blessed with demonhood, becoming a demon prince of the Chaos god Khorne. Horus launches an assault upon the night world of Molech, and locates a gateway into the realm of chaos itself. Horus enters before emerging a few moments later, having seemingly spent centuries performing labours for the Chaos gods. As payment for his efforts, Horus's own power is increased exponentially, becoming an equal to the Emperor of Mankind. 009 M31. A mysterious piece of Xenos technology, known as the Pharos Beacon, is discovered upon the world of Sotha within the realm of Ultramar. The Loyalist Iron Warrior Barabbas Dantiog begins his studies of the artifact. The Night Lord's Legion scatters, following an ambush by the Dark Angels. Conrad Kurz, the Primarch of the Night Lords, along with warriors of the Atramentar, his legion's first company, board the Dark Angels' flagship, the Invincible Reason. The Dark Angels repel the invaders, taking the surviving Atramentar prisoner, while Kurz hides within the bowels of the ship. Fearing that the Imperium has fallen to Horus, and that the Emperor has died due to the Ruinstorm, Roboute Guilliman begins a contingency plan to retain as much of his father's Imperium as possible, establishing Imperium Secundus. Dantioch activates the Pharos, creating a beacon similar to the Astronomicon that allows Loyalist forces to navigate the Ruinstorm, with Macragge as the focal point. The Dark Angels and Blood Angels legions, along with various squads and companies from other legions, make their way to Macragge. Conrad Curze escapes from the Dark Angels and manages to make planetfall. Vulcan manages to escape captivity by teleporting into Macragge's orbit before making what should have been a fatal atmospheric re-entry. Due to his nature as a perpetual, Vulcan would regenerate, but his mind was broken thanks to the torture he had suffered at the hands of the Night Lords. Vulcan and Curze would clash repeatedly during their time upon the world. Sanguinius is crowned as the ruler of Imperium Secundus, though he refuses to be acknowledged as Emperor, instead dubbing himself Emperor Regent. Lionel Johnson is appointed as Lord High Protector. Vulcan is seemingly slain by John Grammaticus after being stabbed with a shard of fulgurite. While Horus's forces still remain within orbit of Molech, Malcador dispatches a squad of knights errant who attempt to slay the War Master. The Space Wolf Braw Tearfinger manages to carve various markings throughout the War Master's flagship before the knights errant confront the War Master. They fail in their mission and suffer substantial losses. The world of Sotha is assaulted by the Night Lord's Legion. In desperation, Barabbas Dantioch is forced to overload the Pharos beacon, disabling or destroying most of the Night Lord vessels in orbit at the cost of his own life, allowing the Ultramarines to claim victory. The energy wave caused by the overload would then begin attracting the Tyranids to the Milky Way galaxy. 010 M31. The Solar War begins. The Alpha Legion detonates a freighter in Terra's orbit, showering the world with debris, killing millions in the process. The Alpha Legion then strike against the world of Pluto, a surveillance world with high strategic value. The Imperial Fists, led by their Primarch Rogal Dawn, launches a counter-assault against the traitors. Dawn slays the Primarch Alfarius in the conflict, causing the surviving Alpha Legion forces to retreat. Omegon, the twin brother of Alfarius, takes his brother's name and assumes full command over the Alpha Legion. A small group of Astartes from the Salamander's Legion braves the perils of the Ruinstorm in order to return the lifeless body of their Primarch, Vulcan, to his homeworld of Nocturne. A contingent of Death Guard, led by Captain Lestygon, attempt to obtain the lifeless body of Vulcan in order to gain the favour of their Primarch, Mortarion. Lestygon's forces fail before attempting to destroy Nocturne by unleashing scores of virus bombs upon the world. However, this also fails, forcing the traitors to launch a planetary assault, but they are repelled by the Loyalists. Vulcan is unexpectedly revived shortly after the culmination of the battle, due to the sacrifice of First Captain Artilus Numion acting on the advice of a soul shard of Magnus the Red. The war within the Webway grows greater in its intensity, forcing the Emperor of Mankind to intervene. The Sisters of Silence order that the souls of 1,000 Psykers are sacrificed to power the Golden Throne in the Emperor's absence. The Emperor's presence manages to briefly stem the tide of the demonic assault, culminating in his battle against the demon Draknien. Unable to destroy Draknien, the Emperor binds the demon into the body of the custodian, Ra Endymion, before ordering that Endymion flee into the depths of the Webway as fast as he can. The Iron Warriors Legion manages to escape from the Eye of Terror after being betrayed and abandoned by their allies within the Emperor's Children. This results in Perturabo learning of an artifact known as the Black Oculus upon the world of Tallarn. As the Iron Warriors reach Tallarn, The world is then subsequently bombarded with virus bombs. While the world's ecology is destroyed, the majority of its loyalist military forces survive, having taken shelter in vast underground bunkers. This results in the Battle of Tallarn, which became the largest armoured conflict in human history for close to 10,000 years, though the Iron Warriors are ultimately defeated by the Loyalists. The Eldari Farseer, Eldrad Ulthran, along with the Loyalist word-bearer Bathuza Narek, begin hunting down and destroying various members of the Xenos organization known as the Cabal, while Vulcan begins to make his way towards Terra by traversing the depths of the webway. 011 M31. The White Scars Legion, pursued by a combined Emperor's Children and Death Guard fleet, would discover the long-abandoned Dark Glass space station. As the Loyalists prepared to make a final stand against the traitor legions, the Stormseer Tagata Yasuge would give his life to open a webway gate through which the White Scars would flee and finally make their way towards Terra. The Night Lord's Legion fractures, turning from a once comprehensive fighting force to little more than a loose group of separate warbands. Lionel Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, continues his hunt for Conrad Kurz, Primarch of the Night Lords, throughout the realm of Ultramar. Kurz is eventually captured and taken prisoner by Loyalist forces, interred within the dungeons of the Dark Angels' flagship, the Invincible Reason. Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines Legion, along with Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, and Lionel Johnson, receive word that Terra still stands and that the Emperor still lives. Imperium Secundus is abolished, and the combined Ultramarines, Blood Angels and Dark Angels fleets begin mobilizing towards Terra and attempt to break through the Ruinstorm. Luther of the Dark Angels Legion begins instigating a full revolt upon the Dark Angels' homeworld of Caliban. Leman Russ and the Space Wolves Legion finally arrive within the Sol system to join the Imperial Fists and the White Scars upon Terra. The Nostramos system is scoured of all life, with the perpetrator speculated to be a group of exiled Raven Guard known as the Ashen Claws. One of the shattered soul fragments of the Thousand Suns Primarch, Magnus the Red, is discovered upon Terra, and Malkador the Sigillite implants it into the Loyalist Thousand Son, Reviol Arvida, in order to save his life from the genetic curse of the flesh change. Arvida is then transformed into a powerful being named Janus. The Second Battle of Davin takes place, as the Blood Angels, Ultramarines and Dark Angels force their way through the Ruinstorm, resulting in the total destruction of the world. Davin's annihilation created a breach through the Ruinstorm, but this breach was anticipated by Horus, who had it blockaded by a vast Traitor Legion armada. The Ultramarines and Dark Angels fleets engage Horus's forces in order to allow the Blood Angels to exit the Ruinstorm and reach Terra. The Dark Angels and Ultramarines would eventually drive off the traitor fleet, before continuing their own much slower route to the Throne World. Circa 012 M31. Traitor forces make anchor within the Trisolian system, in order to enact repairs and resupply before making their final push towards Beta Garman, the gateway to the Sol system. Against Rogel Dawn's wishes, Leman Russ leads the Space Wolves away from Terra in an attempt to destroy Horus with a sudden and decisive blow. After undergoing a spiritual journey and then learning of the War Master's location, Russ begins to make his way to the Mechanicum-held Trisolian system. The Space Wolves take the Sons of Horus Legion by surprise, and Leman Russ, with hundreds of other Space Wolf Astartes, manage to board the Vengeful Spirit, the flagship of Horus himself. During the course of the battle, the tech acolytum of the Mechanicum, Belisarius Call, murders his superior, Magus Domina Hester Aspertius Sigma Sigma, after learning of her defection to the War Master's cause. Call then obtains her intelligence core and installs it into himself, gaining all of her knowledge, including that in relation to cloning. Horus and Russ engage one another in a bitter duel, and Horus suffers a grievous wound after being impaled by the spear of the Emperor wielded by Russ in the battle. Russ hesitates to kill Horus, who then mauls the Space Wolf Primarch. Russ barely manages to escape with his life, and the Space Wolves Legion suffers horrendous casualties. The Space Wolves then flee, but are pursued by forces led by Sons of Horus' first captain, Ezekiel Abaddon, comprised of warriors from the Sons of Horus, Alpha Legion, World Eaters, Thousand Suns, and those elements of the Imperial army that had sided with Horus. Horus enters a comatose state due to the severity of his wounds. The Space Wolves become crippled as a legion, and Leman Russ would fall into a comatose state due to the wounds he had suffered, leaving Bjorn the Fell-Handed as the acting legion commander. The Space Wolves would receive aid from the remnants of the Raven Guard Legion and their Primarch, Corvus Corax. Corax would convince Bjorn to abandon the notion of a heroic last stand, and the Loyalists would escape. 013 M31. Rogal Dorn commits forces from the Collegia Titanica, Legio Skitarii and Imperial Army, as well as several Astartes from his own legion, to reinforce the world of Beta Garman from the inevitable traitor assault. Lorgar, the Primarch of the Wordbearers Legion, becomes aware of Horus's physical condition, and in the War Master's stead orders that the demon Primarchs Angron and Fulgrim be brought back into the fold to prepare for the inevitable assault on Terra. Lorgar himself travels to Fulgrim's pleasure world within the warp, while Perturabo is tasked with retrieving Angron and the remainder of the World Eaters Legion, who have now fallen almost completely to the worship of the Chaos God, Khorne. Horus is restored to full health thanks to a ritual enacted by the War Master's equerry, Malagurst the Twisted. The traitor legions eventually break through the Imperium's defences at Beta Garman, and finally make their way into the Sol system. As the Death Guard Legion travels through the warp, they become afflicted with the Destroyer Plague. Callus Typhon, the first captain of the Death Guard, who allowed the fleet to become stranded and thus afflicted, becomes the host of the Destroyer Plague and is reborn as Typhus, the herald of the god Nurgle. To alleviate his legion's suffering, Mortarion in desperation prays to Nurgle. Nurgle answers the Primarch's prayers, and the Plague God becomes the patron god of the Legion. 014 M31. The Siege of Terra commences. The traitor legions besiege the planet for over 55 days, but the defenders refuse to surrender. The Emperor's Children Legion abandons the siege of the Imperial Palace and instead begins to raid the civilian population for slaves, an attack so violent that it turned the population of Terra against Astartes for millennia and saw them almost being banned from setting foot upon the planet ever again. Loyalist forces managed to break through the traitor rearguard and proceed with all haste to Terra in order to reinforce the defenders. Horus lowers the shields upon his flagship and invites the Emperor to face him in battle, though his exact reasons for doing so are not fully known. The Emperor, along with Sanguinius, Rogal Dorn and a contingent of Astartes, custodians, and soldiers of the Imperial army, teleport on board the ship, but become separated during transport. Malcador the Sigillite, in the Emperor's absence, attempts to harness the energies of the Golden Throne to prevent the warp rift opened by Magnus the Red from enveloping Terra. Sanguinius finds Horus first, but is slain by the War Master. The death of Sanguinius causes a psychic backlash throughout the Blood Angels Legion, briefly turning the entire Legion into frothing berserkers who launch a savage counterattack against the traitors. The Emperor then faces Horus in battle, but holds back from wielding his full power and skill, and is subsequently dominated during the fight. Thanks to the sacrifice of a heroic individual, who some claim to be the soldier Alanius Pius, the Emperor manages to defeat Horus, slaying him with his powers. Rogal Dorn arrives upon the bridge soon after, and brings the Emperor back to the Imperial Palace, interring him into the Golden Throne, where it would act forevermore as the Emperor's life support system. The body of Malcador the Sigillite is destroyed by the strain of keeping the warp in check from the Golden Throne, turning to dust as it is removed and replaced by the Emperor's. Ezekiel Abaddon tears the lightning claw known as the Talon from the War Master's body, and orders for the Legion to retreat. Abaddon would then go into a self-imposed exile along with the Vengeful Spirit soon after. Distraught that his Legion couldn't make it to Terra in time to save the Emperor, Lionel Johnson orders that the Dark Angel's Legion return to their homeworld of Caliban. They become victim to a surprise attack from the traitor Dark Angels known as the Fallen under the command of Luther. Johnson leads an assault upon the planet as his fleet continues to maintain an orbital bombardment. Caliban is eventually destroyed, with the largest surviving fragment serving as the foundations for their new fortress monastery, the Rock. Luther is captured and placed into stasis, but Lionel Johnson mysteriously vanishes and has not been seen since. Roboute Guilliman, the now acting Lord Commander of the Imperium, devises an idea to prevent a conflict such as the Horus Heresy from ever happening again. To this end, the Primarch proposes what he dubs the Codex Astartes, where the Space Marine legions would be split down into smaller chapters. In addition, Guilliman also begins the implementation of a secret contingency plan with the now Archmagus Dominus Belisarius Cawl, should the Imperium face certain destruction once more. The Primaris Project. The Ultramarines pursue the Alpha Legion to Escrador, and Guilliman seemingly kills Omegon, the twin Primarch brother of Alpharius. Despite the apparent death of their Primarch, the Alpha Legion continue to battle on, eventually forcing the Ultramarines to return to orbit and begin an orbital bombardment of the world. The Battle of the Iron Cage. Perturabo orchestrates a trap for Rogal Dorn and baits the Imperial Fists to face him and his Legion. The Imperial Fists suffer horrendous casualties over the span of 3 weeks before being rescued by the Ultramarines. Perturabo then has the gene seed of the slain Imperial Fists sacrificed to the Chaos Gods, who then ascend the Primarch to demonhood, becoming a demon prince of Chaos Undivided. 017 M31. The Great Scouring. Loyalist forces begin their reconquest of the Imperium, while the traitor legions, one by one, are driven into the warp rift known as the Eye of Terror, which then serves as their prison for centuries to come. 021 M31. The Second Founding. The 9 Loyalist legions are split into smaller chapters, with each chapter to exceed no more than 1,000 Astartes. The Grey Knights are founded in secret at this time, and Janus is declared as the chapter's first Supreme Grand Master, though preparations had been made by Malcador before the Siege of Terra. Corvus Corax secludes himself away within the Ravenspire within the Fortress Monastery of the Raven Guard chapter. 022 M31. Corax emerges from his isolation and commandeers a single ship before travelling into the Eye of Terror. His last recorded words are simply "Nevermore." Corax soon encounters and battles against Lorgar, who had also become a demon prince of Chaos Undivided, before the Word-Bearer's Primarch is forced to retreat. 034 M31. Rogal Dorn leads a defense against one of the earliest Black Crusades. The Primarch vanishes during the ensuing conflict, with only his hand being recovered by his chapter. 081 M31. Jagatai Khan vanishes whilst pursuing a Drukhari raiding party through a webway gate. 121 M31. The Ultramarines and several of their successor chapters clash against the Emperor's Children Legion at the Battle of Thessala. Roboute Guilliman is mortally wounded by Fulgrim and interred within stasis. 209 M31. Leman Russ, along with the entirety of his Wolf Guard, save for Bjorn the Fell-Handed, leave for the Eye of Terror to pursue an unknown objective. 10 years after this event, with no sign of their Primarch returning, Bjorn is made into the first Great Wolf of the chapter. Bjorn then announces the Great Hunt in order to locate their Primarch, but the chapter fails in its quest. 300 years later, Bjorn is mortally wounded in battle and interred within the sarcophagus of a dreadnought. Unknown date M31. Konrad Kurz allows himself to be assassinated by the Kalidas assassin, Mashen. The Sisters of Silence are disbanded, and are forced to live within remote convents upon distant worlds far from civilization. The traitor legions begin a series of internecine conflicts, with most of their ire being focused against the Sons of Horus Legion. Horus's body is stolen by the Emperor's Children Legion from the demon world of Malium. The Thousand Sun sorcerer, Iskandar Kaon, along with a ragtag group of other traitor legionnaires, locate the vengeful spirit and first Captain Abaddon of the Sons of Horus. Abaddon then begins mustering forces, laying the foundations for an entirely new legion, known as the Black Legion, from the ashes of the Sons of Horus. Abaddon's forces launch an assault upon the Emperor's Children's stronghold of Harmony. They discover that the apothecary Fabius Bile had created clones of several of the Primarchs, including a perfect clone of Horus. Abaddon manages to slay this clone, however, and the remaining clones, with the exception of a single clone of Fulgrim, are also destroyed. Abaddon's Black Legion succeeds in breaking out of the Eye of Terror, before immediately coming into conflict with the Black Templars chapter. Abaddon slays their chapter master Sigismund in combat, before declaring the start of the Long War. Soon after this, Abaddon, now known as the Despoiler, acquires from the world of Uralan the demon blade known as Draknien. Unknown date M32. The Thousand Suns Traitor Legion, led by the demon Primarch Magnus the Red, draws most of the Space Wolves chapter's forces away from their homeworld of Fenris before launching a full-scale invasion in retaliation for the burning of Prospero during the Horus Heresy. The dreadnought Bjorn the Fell-Handed is roused from stasis and takes command of the defending Space Marines, comprising only a single of their 12 great companies. The Thousand Suns are driven away, but the Space Wolves suffer horrendous losses, and an experimental cure for the curse of the Wulfen is destroyed in the process. The religious group known as the Temple of the Saviour Emperor is recognized as the official religious body of the Imperium, and renamed the Adeptus Ministorum, or Ecclesiarchy. The low-born Drukhari slave, Asdrubal Vecht, begins to make his plans to enact a coup that will allow him to rule over the realm of Camorra. The Black Oculus on Tallarn is activated, allowing demons to swarm onto the world. The Eldari of Craftworld Bieltan launch an assault upon Tallarn in order to halt this demonic invasion. A truce is called between the humans and Eldari, who then work together to drive back the demons. The Oculus is then sealed in Rockcrete along with Eldari warding runes before being buried in an unknown location. The Eldari exchange a vow of friendship with Tallarn before returning to Bieltan. Circa 500 M32. The Ecclesiarch of the Adeptus Ministorum obtains a permanent seat upon the High Lords of Terror. 544 M32. The War of the Beast begins. The Orcs manage to rebuild their strength under the command of an Orc warlord known as the Beast and his Primarch lieutenants. The Orcs' initial strike occurs at the world of Adamantua. the majority of the Imperial Fist's Space Marine chapter are overwhelmed and destroyed. Lord Commander Militant Heth leads a counter-offensive against the Orcs at Adamantua, along with the remaining Imperial Fists from Terra. Imperial forces are destroyed, save for a single battle brother of the Imperial Fists, who would be recovered by an Adeptus Mechanicus survey team many weeks later. The Orcs lay waste to hundreds of worlds, including the homeworlds of various Space Marine chapters. Imperial forces are stretched thin and struggle to combat the Orcish hordes. The Imperial Navy, reluctantly led by High Admiral Langsun, engages the Orcs at Port Sanctus and succeeds in destroying an attack moon, though the Navy suffers catastrophic losses. Lansing returns to Terra a hero, but celebrations are prematurely ended when another Orc attack moon appears within Terra's orbit. Captain Corland, the last Imperial Fist, initiates the Last Wall Protocol, calling for all Imperial Fist successor chapters to unite into a legion-like force to stand against the Orcs. The Orcs begin attacking non-Imperial worlds, including those belonging to the Iron Warriors Traitor Legion. The High Lords of Terra continue to bicker and plot against one another despite the threat of the Orcs. Jaskina Tull recalls the ships of the merchant fleet and, using her oratory skills, inspires thousands of civilians to march against the attack moon in Terra's orbit, in what was dubbed the Proletarian Crusade. The crusade, however, results in most of the civilian forces being slaughtered with impunity. The Orcs dispatch diplomats to demand that Terra surrenders to the Beast. A group of Eldari Harlequins, sent by the Farseer Eldrad Ulthran, obtain access to the Imperial Palace. The group's Shadow Seer, Lariel Ray, attempts to breach the Eternity Gate and access the throne room, but is caught by the Custodes as many of her comrades are also slain. The Harlequin is spared from death thanks only to the Inquisition and the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum, Draken Vangarich, who have the Xenos taken away for interrogation. Corland meets with the chapter masters of the Black Templars, Excoriators, Crimson Fists and Fists Exemplar chapters, and is declared the commander of the Last Wall, due to being the last Imperial Fist and, by extension, its chapter master. The Black Templars and Iron Warriors are forced to join forces against the Orcs upon the world of Zelenak IV. The dreadnought Magnarek learns of a potential way to stop the Orcs. The High Lords continue to prove their incompetence, causing Corland to grow more angered and frustrated by their sheer ineptitude. The Adeptus Mechanicus begins experimenting with Orc teleportation technology, and learns of the location of the Beast, but refuses to provide the information to the rest of the Imperium. Lariel Ray reveals that the Primarch Vulcan still lives, and is fighting against the Orcs upon the world of Caldera. Miscommunication between the Imperium and the Adeptus Mechanicus leads to brief skirmishes erupting between the Fists Exemplar chapter and the Martian Skitarii, before Corland is informed of both the location of Vulcan and the Beast. Corland leads an army to Caldera to obtain Vulcan's aid, and together, Imperial forces destroy an Orc attack moon that was in the midst of being constructed. Vulcan initially refuses to help Corland against the Beast, until he learns that the Orcs are amassing upon Ulanor. Vulcan agrees to return to Terra with Corland. Several companies of Fists Exemplar, under command of First Captain Zerberin, are forced into a prolonged alliance with the Iron Warriors Legion, after contact with other Imperial forces is lost. A vast Imperial force comprised of Space Marine chapters, Imperial Guard regiments, and Adeptus Mechanicus legions launch an all-out assault upon Ulanor, striking at the Orc capital of Gorkogrod. Imperial forces suffer massive casualties from the world's defences, before Vulcan manages to locate the Beast within the Orcs' Temple Gargant. Vulcan and the Beast are caught within a massive explosion that destroys everything within several kilometers of its epicenter. Vulcan is never seen again, and is presumed dead. 545 M32. Despite the objections of the High Lords of Terra, Courland organizes the veteran Space Marines of the Ulanor campaign into specialist kill teams that become known as the Death Watch. These kill teams prove instrumental in the war and succeed in destroying the attack moon in Terra's orbit. Courland receives the last recording of Magneric, informing the Imperium that the Orc psychers known as Weird Boys are a potential weakness in the Orcs' military machine. The inquisitorial representatives of the High Lords of Terra accompany the Death Watch in their search for the Sisters of Silence, finding a convent of 50 upon the world of Nidires. Despite their anger at being cast aside, the Sisters of Silence eventually agree to lend their aid against the beast. The Death Watch captures multiple Orc Weird Boys, which are then placed in the custody of the Sisterhood. The Imperium launches a second assault upon Ulanor, but is driven back by the Orcs after Courland is killed. With his death, the Imperial Fists chapter is destroyed completely. Maximus Thane assumes the mantle of Lord Commander of the Imperium. 546 M32. Maximus Thane, Chapter Master of the Fists Exemplar, declares that the Imperial Fists are to be rebuilt from a portion of each successor chapter. Thane becomes the new Chapter Master of the Imperial Fists, leaving the only remaining Fists Exemplar as those under the command of First Captain Zerberin. The Space Marine chapters of the four founding are created. The kill teams of the Death Watch become a fully fledged Space Marine chapter, with its first chapter master being the Space Wolf Asker Warfist. Thane leads a third assault upon Ulanor and succeeds in slaying the beast, using the captured Weird Boys to overload with War energy and causing the heads of millions of Orcs to detonate. The Adeptus Mechanicus, seeking to obtain and study Orc technology, teleport Ulanor to a new location, where it is eventually named Armageddon, despite assuring others in the Imperium they had destroyed it. Thane leads a crusade to eliminate remaining Orc forces within Imperial space, and appoints Draken Vangarage to rule over the High Lords in his absence. The Inquisition is reorganized into the Ordo Xenos and the Ordo Malleus, with the Death Watch and Grey Knights being appointed as their respective chamber militants. The Fists Exemplar under Zerberin's command turn traitor, leaving a single company of loyalists to flee and return to their homeworld of Idolica. The loyalist Fists Exemplar are reintegrated into the Imperial Fists, and all records detailing the Fists Exemplar are ordered to be destroyed by Maximus Thane. The Beheading. Draken Vangarage has the other members of the High Lords of Terra, with the exception of one of the inquisitorial representatives, assassinated and replaced with beings easier to manipulate. Vangarage becomes driven mad by stress and power, and becomes a sadistic dictator. 597 M32. The Second Black Crusade. Traitor Legion forces under the command of Abaddon the Despoiler launch an assault upon Cadia, but are repelled. 646 M32. Maximus Thane returns to Terra to eliminate Draken Vangarage. As the Imperial Fists make their way into the Imperial Palace, they are swarmed by an entire army of assassins. The chapter tracks Vangarage down to within the Aversa Assassin Temple, and after fending off hundreds of Aversa assassins, Thane would execute Vangarage for his treason. Various lords and politicians upon Terra begin engaging in their own power struggle to obtain power and control over Terra's political environment. The Ultramarines chapter master Agnathio, along with 50 other Space Marine chapter masters, make their way to Terra, where they forcefully end such petty power struggles, until the 12 seats of the High Lords of Terra are filled once more. 909 M32. The Third Black Crusade begins, where Abaddon succeeds in destroying the remains of Saint Gestahl, in hopes of preventing a future prophecy from ever being fulfilled. 077 M33. The Adeptus Ministorum violently acquires a significant number of shrine worlds in a series of bloody conflicts known as the War of the Confessor. 265 M33. High Admiral Ursus is exiled from his position within the High Lords of Terror and sentenced to undertake an exploratory mission along the very edge of the galaxy. Ursus succeeds in claiming many new worlds in the name of the Emperor, bringing them into the fold of the Imperium. 780 M33. The War of the False Primarch begins, and would last for over 80 years. 860 M33. The High Lords of Terror convene the Pentarchy of Blood. The Charnel Guard, Carcharodons, Flesh Eaters, Red Talons and Death Eagles chapters are charged with eliminating 11 other Space Marine chapters that had been declared as Traitoris Perdita. Circa 870 M33. The rulers of the Hellion sector fall to chaotic corruption and declare secession from the Imperium. The Hellion sector's militaristic forces begin launching a series of assaults upon its neighbouring systems, killing billions. Unknown date M33. The Ecclesiarch declares a holy war against the organisation known as the Confederation of Light. The survivors within the Confederation are driven into hiding upon the world of Dimamar. All forms of open worship within the Imperium, with the exception of those demonstrated by the Adeptus Mechanicus and Adeptus Astartes, are controlled and monitored by the Adeptus Ministorum. 001 M34. The Fourth Black Crusade begins, resulting in the destruction of the Cromarch Citadel upon the world of Elfanor. 401 M34. The Black Templars succeed in slaying a Xenos Psyker, known as the Cacodominus. The resulting death scream results in billions of astropaths being overwhelmed and killed, as well as a temporary disruption of the Astronomicon. Dozens of subsectors lose contact within the Imperium, and millions of ships become lost within the warp. Circa 500 M34. The Space Marine chapters of the 8th Founding are created. 600 M34. The Iron Warriors Traitor Legion undergoes a civil war upon their world of Medringad, before the Legion is shattered into numerous warbands. The conflict ends as suddenly as it began, causing some to speculate that it was instigated by the Legion's demon Primarch, Perturabo. 979 M34. A civil war erupts on Mars between the Adeptus Mechanicus of the Northern and Southern Hemispheres, known as the North-South Mars conflict. Both factions eventually come under attack by millions of feral, malfunctioning and partially zombified servitors under the control of a being known as the Prophet of Cogs. Disgusted by the Prophet's actions, the Northern and Southern factions set aside their differences and join forces to defeat the Prophet of Cogs, who is driven from Mars entirely. Rumours persist that the Prophet of Cogs still haunts the Alpha Centauri system. Circa 075 M35. The Nova Terra Interregnum begins. The ruling council of the world of Nova Terra secedes from the Imperium, declaring themselves and the entirety of the Segmentum Pacificus as an independent empire. In addition, a secondary and concurrent division would eventually spread throughout the Adeptus Mechanicus, Collegia Titanica and several closely aligned Space Marine chapters, resulting in the Moirae Schism. The Moirae Schism would eventually result in the destruction of the Moirae Forge world by the Martian fleets, and the founding of the Sons of Medusa Space Marine chapter. 104 M35. The Ravenwing Company of the Dark Angels chapter journeys to Nova Terra in an attempt to apprehend one of the mysterious Fallen, following rumours that a member of the world's ruling council was in fact the enigmatic being known as Cypher. Circa 200 M35. Ecclesiarch Benedin IV moves the ruling body of the Adeptus Ministorum from Terra to the world of Ophelia 7. Now unchecked, the power and influence of the ecclesiarchy begins to grow ever greater, as the strength and numbers of their military force, the Frateris Templar, begins to rival that of the Astra Militarum. 344 M35. An Orc Space Hulk crash lands upon the tomb world of Angelis. Imperial xenoarchaeology teams upon the world are stranded, and become either trapped underground within the ancient Necron tomb complexes, or horrifically mutated by the radiation emitted by the Hulk. Those humans trapped underground eventually degenerate into a race known by the Orcs as Diggers, while those affected by the radiation become known as Muties. The Orcs themselves establish a settlement known as Mechtown, and the world becomes informally designated by the Orcs as Gorkamorka. Circa 500 M35. Grieger XI becomes the new ecclesiarch, and declares that the Holy Synod will return to Terra. His cardinals oppose such an act, but tithes are increased to finance the relocation and renovation of the ecclesiarchal palace upon Terra, as well as the construction of more ecclesiarchal palaces upon other worlds. This increase in tithes leads to objections and complaints from the planetary governors of several worlds, and eventually mass riots begin erupting throughout the Imperium, with many worlds refusing to pay tithes to the ecclesiarchy. The forces of the Frateris Templar are dispatched to put down any revolt, and assassins are even deployed to slay stubborn governors upon these worlds. These events sow the seeds for the Age of Apostasy. 789 M35. The world of Towers discovered by the Adeptus Mechanicus exploratory vessel Land's Vision. The world and its Stone Age Xenos inhabitants are scheduled to be cleansed for Imperial colonization. However, violent warp storms unexpectedly erupt around the world, preventing this from happening. 867 M35. The Exodite world of Menimshimash is overrun by a mass demonic incursion. All life upon the world is either destroyed or corrupted by chaotic taint. 975 M35. The ecclesiarchy begins rebuilding the divided Imperium into a religious state. A series of holy wars would erupt between the Imperium and the Empire of Nova Terra. The Dark Angel Space Marine chapter lends the ecclesiarchy their aid as a cover story for their pursuit of more members of the Fallen. Unknown date M35. The former slave turned Archon, Asdrubal Vect establishes the cult of the Black Heart and begins to make plans in order to overthrow the noble houses of the Drukhari realm of Camorra. Vect increases the number of raids against Imperial territory within the Desiderian Gulf, forcing the Imperium to respond by dispatching warriors of the Salamanders chapter to put an end to the Xenos raids. Vect's forces succeed in capturing the Salamander strike cruiser, Forgehammer, and bring it back to Camorra, but the ship is confiscated by one of Vect's rivals, Lord Zelian. The Astartes on board the Forgehammer continue to mount a fierce resistance against the Drukhari, before warriors of the Salamanders, Silver Skulls and Howling Griffins chapters come to their aid, having followed a psychic beacon emitted by the Forgehammer's librarian, Hestian. The Astartes slaughter thousands of Drukhari as they fought to make their escape from Camorra, resulting in the majority of the noble houses being destroyed. In the aftermath of the carnage, Asdrubal Vect makes his move, seizing total control of Camorra and declares himself as the supreme overlord of the Drukhari realm. The cult of the Black Heart becomes the first of the Drukhari Cabals, now known as the Cabal of the Black Heart. Gene Stealers are first encountered by the Imperium upon the moon of Imgal. Early M36. The Space Marine chapters of the 13th to the 20th foundings are created. Adeptus Mechanicus Genitors attempt to remove several gene seed flaws found within the genetic heritage of many Astartes chapters, resulting in the 21st founding. The results of these experiments are mixed, with many suffering horrific flaws or mutations as a result. As such, this founding becomes known as the Cursed Founding. 104 M36. Several intact and fully functioning first-generation STCs are recovered by the Adeptus Mechanicus, within the region of space known as the Mortuum Chain. 200 M36. The Age of Apostasy begins. High Lord of the Administratum, Gog Vandir, overthrows Paulus III and becomes the new Ecclesiarch. Because of his dual position within the High Lords, Vandir becomes the single most politically powerful mortal man within the Imperium, and his reign becomes known within historical records as the Reign of Blood. Vandir orders Zyes Jarek, the master of the Kalidas Assassin Temple, to assassinate the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum and assume his identity. Jarek inadvertently slays a body double of the Grand Master, leading to a civil war within the Officio Assassinorum. The Grand Master eventually kills Jarek before fleeing into a self-imposed exile. The Inquisition establishes the Ordo Sicarius to monitor the actions of the Assassinorum, so that similar such events would not occur again in the future. Circa 200 to 230 M36. Vandir travels to the world of San Lior, where he discovers the female warrior cult known as the Daughters of the Emperor. Vandir manages to deceive the cult into believing that he has the personal protection and blessings of the Emperor himself, and the cult swears allegiance to him, becoming his personal bodyguards. The cult renames itself the Brides of the Emperor. The Holy Synod of the Ecclesiarchy attempts to oust Vandir from power, but fails. The Brides of the Emperor then execute each member of the Synod, cementing Vandir's stranglehold upon the Adeptus Ministorum. Circa 238 M36. Sebastian Thor is born upon the world of Dimamar. Circa 258 to 269 M36. Sebastian Thor becomes the leader of the long-hidden remnants of the Confederation of Light. Thor begins proselytizing the people of Dimamar in order to resist Vandir's tyrannical rule. Vandir dispatches the forces of the Frateris Templar to kill Thor, but the Templar fleet is caught within a violent warp storm that destroys it utterly when they translate out of the warp. Thor names this storm the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath, and claims that it is a sign of the Emperor's anger at Vandir, whose actions have dishonored the Emperor's name. The Confederation of Light emerges from hiding and begins to travel from world to world, preaching sermons against Vandir. Gustav Hediatrix, Fabricator General of Mars, demands that Vandir be brought to judgment. Vandir in response dissolves the Council of the High Lords of Terror and orders his forces to attack any who question his rule, including the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Adeptus Astartes, declaring that they are heretics. The Imperial Fists, Soul Drinkers, Black Templars, and Firehawk Space Marine chapters, and a host of Martian Skitarii lay siege to the Ecclesiarchal Palace upon Terra. Captain General Excelsior of the Adeptus Custodes and a number of Custodian Guard infiltrate the heart of Vandir's domain and meet with Alesia Dominica, the leader of the Brides of the Emperor, stating that their faith in the Emperor was being manipulated by Gog Vandir. Leaving his men as hostages, Excelsior would escort Dominica and 5 of her companions, Catherine, Sylvana, Lucia, Mina, and Arabella, through a series of underground passages, escorting them to the throne room of the Imperial Palace and bringing them before the Emperor himself. The 5 brides return to Vandir's stronghold, and Alesia Dominica personally declares Vandir as a heretic and a traitor before executing him. The High Lords of Terror are reinstated, and many of Vandir's supporters are put on trial. Sebastian Thor is also put on trial but is declared innocent, and subsequently is instated as Ecclesiarch. The decree passive is passed, forbidding the Adeptus Ministorum from having men under arms. Due to a loophole within the decree's wording, the Brides of the Emperor are allowed to act as a chamber militant for the Ecclesiarchy, and once formally instated, they become known as the Adepta Sororitas, or Sisters of Battle. Circa 270 M36. Sebastian Thor leaves the ecclesiarchal palace and spends the next 8 decades travelling throughout the Imperium to quell heresy and purge apostates. 310 M36. Cardinal Bucharus of the world of Gathalamor begins establishing an empire for himself by preaching that Terra and the Emperor had fallen, declaring that Gathalamor was now the spiritual centre of this new Imperium. His heresies would become known as the Plague of Unbelief. Bucharus attempts to lead his crusade into the Fenris system and bring the worlds within under his rule, but suffers horrendous losses and setbacks thanks to the actions of the Space Wolves chapter, who are sworn to protect all worlds within the Fenris system. One of Bucharus's lieutenants, Brother Machias, is captured and interrogated by the Dark Angels. Circa 350 M36. Sebastian Thor returns to Terra before shortly dying at the age of 112. Alexis XXII is appointed as his successor as ecclesiarch. Alexis further devised a convent sanctorum and the convent prioress of the Adepta Sororitas, granting each convent 2 militant orders. These militant orders founded are the orders of the Ebon Chalice, Valorous Heart, Fiery Heart, and Argent Shroud. Circa 500 M36. The primitive Tau race continues advancing their civilization. This leads to a series of violent wars between the different tribal subspecies of Tau. These wars become known within Tau historical records as the Mont Tau, or Death Age. 565 M36. The world of Giro Alphas begins to suffer from a prolonged planetary drought. In desperation, the native tribes begin praying for rain. Their prayers are answered by the plague god Nergal, and a torrential downpour begins lasting 8 days and nights. This rain causes thousands to drown and millions more to die from disease. The tallyman of Nergal, Epidemius, is sent to catalogue the destruction. The surviving defenders are overcome by the tallyman's horde, and the world disappears from Imperial records but 1 week later. 723 M36. The 5th Black Crusade, led by Abaddon the Despoiler, begins. The demon prince Doombreed is summoned, and succeeds in destroying the Venerator and Warhawk Space Marine chapters. 791 M36. The enigmatic Tau known as the Ethereals reveal themselves to the other Tau tribes before a battle at a place known as Fio Vash. Their presence ends the Mont Tau as the Ethereals begin to unify each of the warring tribes. The caste system is introduced, as is their philosophy of the Tau Va, or greater good, and the United Tau Empire begins to expand. 901 M36. The 6th Black Crusade takes place. Abaddon the Despoiler brings the Sons of Horus warband, known as the Sons of the Eye, to heel, killing their leader and absorbing their warband into his Black Legion. 989 M36. The prolonged warp storms and permanent warp rifts within the galaxy, such as the Eye of Terror and the Maelstrom, begin expanding in size. The number of souls fed to power the Golden Throne is increased by a factor of 4 to maintain the optimal power of the device, as well as to ensure the Astronomicon continues to burn brightly. The number of black ships is increased, as they continuously harvest a tithe of psychers to feed their souls into the Golden Throne. 010 M37. A red giant class star within the Maxil Beta system becomes infused with extensive amounts of warp energy, causing it to detonate and spread the corrupting influence of the warp to every world hundreds of light years from the epicenter of the explosion. The inhabitants of each world are either mutated or become vessels for demonic possession, leading to the Imperium mobilizing the Grey Knights, a dozen other Space Marine chapters, several orders of the Adepta Sororitas, and countless regiments of the Astra Militarum to contain this mass demonic incursion. billions of lives are lost in the act of containing and ultimately destroying this outbreak of chaotic corruption. 321 M37. Saint Basilius declares that 30 Space Marine chapters are found wanting in the eyes of the Emperor, and announces the beginning of the Abyssal Crusade. The chapters who are seen as lacking in their devotion to the Emperor and the Imperium are given a choice of being granted death or to travel into the warp rift known as the Eye of Terror to cleanse the tainted worlds within and to bring death to the enemies of mankind. All 30 chapters choose the latter option. 502 M37. The Tau Empire's first sphere of expansion begins, leading to the race's first encounter with the Orcs. The Tau realize that the Orcs cannot be brought into the Tau Va due to their mindset and psyche, but they remain undeterred. 550 M37. A coalition of rogue tech priests, under the command of an individual known as the Blind King, decrees that humanity is an insult to the Omnissiah, and declares war upon the Imperium, beginning the events of the Ecclusiad War. The Apostles of the Blind King use a number of artifacts from the Dark Age of technology to detonate a number of stars within the outer reaches of Segmentum Obscurus, before they are defeated by forces from the Iron Hand Space Marine chapter. 754 M37. Menial labourers across thousands of worlds begin rebelling against their masters and overseers within the Administratum, demanding better treatment, higher quality of life, equality, and tolerance. This rebellion proves popular amongst the younger members of the populations, earning the rebellion the name of the Children's Crusade. Billions of these rebels attempt to make a pilgrimage to Terra, but the majority of their vessels become lost within the warp. 811 M37. The 7th Black Crusade begins. The Blood Angels chapter suffers severe casualties during the Battle of Makan. 893 M37. The Proctroon becomes the first Xenos race to become assimilated into the Tau Empire, but soon become extinct, thanks to an unexpected viral outbreak that lasts for several generations. The Tau, immune to this plague, lay claim to the Proctroon's homeworld, establishing it as a sept world for their empire, that is known today as Bor-Khan. Circa 900 M37. The Disciples of Caliban chapter is founded by the request of the Dark Angels chapter master, Anaziel. The chapter is rumoured to have been created for the sole purpose of hunting the notorious fallen Dark Angel known as Cypher. 999 M37. Abaddon the Despoiler launches the 8th Black Crusade for the sole purpose of appeasing the Chaos God Tzeentch. 034 M38. The Alpha Legion Demon Prince, known as Voldorius, unleashes a nanotech weapon from the Dark Age of technology called the Blood Tide to kill billions. 112 M38. The Vorpal Swords return from the Abyssal Crusade, and are the sole Space Marine chapter to have not been destroyed or corrupted during the course of the Crusade. The chapter master of the Vorpal Swords declares Basilius as a false saint, and has the man's remains and relics launched into the heart of a nearby star. All shrines dedicated to Basilius are subsequently destroyed. 116 M38. The demon known as the Changeling assumes the form of an Eldari solitaire and infiltrates a troop of Harlequins that travels to the craft world of Il-Sariad. As the Harlequin troop performs one of its plays, the Changeling reveals itself and summons the Mask, the once most favoured dancer of Slaanesh, and a horde of Slaaneshi demons to run rampant throughout the craft world. While the craft world's aspect warriors were able to drive back this demonic incursion, the aftermath of the conflict reveals that thousands of Eldari were slain. 299 M38. The world of Altid 156 secedes from the Imperium. A regiment of the Astra Militarum is sent to bring the world back into compliance, but the Space Marines of the Dark Angels chapter insist on assaulting the world themselves. This is due to the instigator of the rebellion, Elucidax the Keeper, being in actuality Zarya, who was one of the mysterious Fallen, Dark Angels who turned traitor during the events of the Horus Heresy. Zarya is captured and made to repent his sins before being executed. 555 M38. The sororitas of the Order of the Valorous Heart begin the First Sevavan Crusade, purging the cardinal world of Sevavan of a heretical cult. 573 M38. The Ninth Black Crusade begins. This conflict culminated with the destruction of an Imperial Navy fortress, the Celestial Sword Space Marine chapter, and the near annihilation of the Lamenters chapter, while several smaller Traitor Legion fleets travelled from the Eye of Terror to unknown destinations. 606 M38. The Tau Empire engages in a protracted campaign against the Orcs. This campaign also sees the first widespread use of the Firecast's trademark pulse rifle weaponry. 666 M38. The Ravenwing Company of the Dark Angels chapter loses 3 separate Grandmasters over the course of the year during the chapter's hunt for the Fallen. Over the next 20 years, as the various captains of the chapter evaluate potential candidates to elevate to Grandmaster of the company, leadership of the Ravenwing falls to the Grandmaster of the Angels of Vengeance chapter's Ravenwing Company. 755 M38. The world of Baal Alpha is besieged by a massive Orc war. The world's planetary defense forces and a detachment of the Imperial Fists chapter keep the Orcs at bay long enough for the Blood Angels chapter to provide the defenders reinforcements, destroying the Orcs soon after. 788 M38. The sororitas orders of the Bloody Rose and Sacred Rose are founded by Ecclesiarch Deacus VI. 884 M38. The Tau Empire established their alliance with the Kroot race, who now serve the Tau as an auxiliary race after the Tau saved their homeworld of Pek from an Orc invasion. The Empire's first sphere of expansion comes to a close approximately 70 years later, with 7 new Sept worlds established overall. 967 M38. The Drukhari Archon known as Cruella the Vile leads her Cabal of the Flayed Skull on a raid that massacres the 87th Blue Bloods Imperial Guard Regiment, with the regiment's captain left as the sole human survivor. The captain is interrogated by the Inquisition, but dies during the course of the questioning. 001 M39. The 10th Black Crusade begins. The Iron Warriors Traitor Legion launches an all-out assault against the world of Medusa, the homeworld of the Iron Hand Space Marine chapter, but are eventually repelled. 018 M39. The Tau Empire begins its second sphere of expansion. 053 M39. The Vespid becomes the newest race to join the Tau Empire, though there are suspicions of foul play from the ethereal caste, as the compliance of the Vespid only succeeded after the strain leaders of the Vespid race were given special devices known as Communion Helms. 160 M39. The Revilers and Red Seraph Space Marine chapters defeat a massive Orc incursion that attempted to break into the Orpheus sector. The surviving elements of the Orc War would continue to plague the sector for years to come through piratical raids. 301 M39. Abaddon the Despoiler launches the 11th Black Crusade, targeting the cardinal world of Reloria. An Orc war led by Murgor Undredteeth invades Reloria during the battle, leading to a 3-way conflict between the Imperium, the forces of Chaos, and the Orcs. Several Orcs are captured by Abaddon's forces and subsequently used as guinea pigs for the War Master's experiments. 330 M39. The Mantis Warriors chapter tracks down and apprehends the heretic cardinal, Khafra, turning him over to the Inquisition upon the Watchworld of Volsingham. the population of the world Othruska's sign succeeds in eliminating all pathogens upon their world in just a single generation. Offended by this action, the plague god, Nergal, sends his demonic legions to corrupt the world. 384 M39. The battle fleet of the Calixis sector is established by the Imperial Navy, consisting of 3 grand cruisers, 2 battle cruisers, and a single battleship. 487 M39. The demon prince of Slaanesh, Lilesh Snarelust, orchestrates a massive demonic incursion across numerous Imperial worlds. Snarelust's forces would face resistance from the Eldari craft world of Saimhan, whose High Chieftain would personally banish the demon back into the warp. 533 M39. The Salamanders chapter of the Adeptus Astartes would defend the cardinal world of Phaistos Osiris from an Orc war led by the warlord Ruckripper. Much of Ruckripper's forces would be incinerated within the world's capital after the Salamanders ignited thousands of gallons of Promethean fuel that was left as a trap for the Orcs. Ruckripper is slain, and the Salamanders begin hunting down and eliminating any survivors. 645 M39. The Black Templars chapter leads a crusade to conquer the Jerulus system. During this crusade, the chapter discovers an STC that holds the schematics for the Land Raider Crusader. 763 M39. The Adeptus Mechanicus officially recognizes and sanctions the manufacturing of the Land Raider Crusader. This blessing by the Mechanicus is seen by many as little more than a formality, as hundreds of Space Marine chapters are already using this particular pattern of Land Raider. 876 M39. The Tau destroy the Eldari maiden world of Lerasus in their pursuit of Drukhari raiders. The craft world of Iyanden retaliates to this wanton destruction by assaulting the Tau sept world of Karmais. 887 M39. The Nova Marines and Blood Drinkers chapters deploy over 200 Terminators to purge the Space Hulk Death of Integrity of Genestealer infestation. Countless numbers of STCs are recovered during the mission, earning each chapter a new strike cruiser as a token of gratitude from the Adeptus Mechanicus. Unknown date late M39. The Executioners chapter's fortress monastery of Darkenvault comes under assault from an unknown Xenos race. The chapter suffers devastating losses and would come close to being utterly destroyed, but the Xenos would be driven back and annihilated thanks to the timely arrival of the Astral Claws chapter. The Executioners in their gratitude swear to one day repay their debt to the Astral Claws. 052 M40. The world of Kochalos is invaded by the forces of the demon prince Bubelgor, and its human population is slaughtered. The Necrons of the Old Tep dynasty, slumbering within the bowels of Kochalos, awaken to find their world occupied by demonic entities. The Necrons battle against the demon prince's armies but are ultimately destroyed, with Bubelgor taking the heads of the Necrons as trophies. 101 M40. The Star Phantoms chapter is forced to abandon their homeworld due to a massive migration from the time-altering Xenos known as the Hrud. Only approximately 30% of the chapter manages to survive the carnage. 228 M40. The Firehawks chapter instigates a cleansing of the Golgothan wastes known as the First Castigation of Golgotha. 319 M40. The Orc warboss Badrock Gutgouger asserts his dominance over the various Orc tribes within the Shattered Deeps, and his forces grow so large that it threatens to become a fully fledged war. The Koenig armoured regiments of the Astra Militarum spend the next 7 months tracking and subsequently destroying the Orc forces, before proudly displaying the corpse of the warboss upon the spire of Amraphel's Red Cathedral. 433 M40. The High Autarch of the world of Krieg secedes from the Imperium. A civil war breaks out between loyalist and separatist forces, with the rebels slowly but surely claiming victory after victory. The Loyalist commander, Colonel Yerton of the Krieg 83rd Regiment, declares that the world belongs to the Emperor and nobody else, before subjecting the planet to an atomic cleansing, turning the world into a desolate, radioactive wasteland, causing a total collapse of the world's ecosystem, and subjecting the planet to a nuclear winter. The Civil War would continue for the next 500 years. 485 M40. The Alpha Legion invades the world of Gorstengrad, the homeworld of the Loyalist Emperor's Swords chapter. Thanks to the activation of countless sleeper agents, the Emperor's swords are overwhelmed and destroyed, and their homeworld is utterly devastated. The Alpha Legion then retreats to the eastern fringes with their fresh supplies of gene seed and recruits in tow. 550 M40. A combined Alpha Legion and Night Lord's assault results in the destruction of the Dark Angel's recruitment world of Grimm's Landing. 561 M40. An Emperor's Children invasion fleet is destroyed by an unknown regiment of the Astra Militarum upon the world of Nexus. To keep the information of demonic entities hidden away from public knowledge, the Ordo Malleus subjects the world to exterminatus and alters official records to state that the slaughter was caused by the Eldari. 567 M40. Sergeant Darneth Lysander of the Imperial Fist's 3rd Company leads his squad to victory against a heretical cult during the Battle of Colonial Bridge. 18 years later, Lysander is promoted to captain of the 2nd Company. 600 M40. The Tau of the Viola Sept lures an encroaching Orc force into the plasma storm between the twin suns of the world, incinerating the Greenskin Horde. 896 M40. The Formosian, Greet, and Thraxian races agree to join the Tau Empire. The Watercast of the Empire also attempts to bring the Hrud and Arakin into the fold, but are violently rejected. 901 M40. The Mantis warriors ambush a Drukhari warband upon the World of Tranquility, utterly destroying the Xenos forces. 933 M40. Loyalist forces claim victory in the Krieg Civil War, and the world becomes officially part of the Imperium once more. The regiments recruited from Krieg for the Astra Militarum become henceforth known as the Death Corps of Krieg. The Departmentum Unitorum finds the world is drastically behind in submitting tithes. As recompense, Krieg offers 20 fully raised regiments ready for immediate deployment, and continues to offer these regiments despite their homeworld being an irradiated wasteland to this very day. 050 M41. The Iron Hands chapter launches an assault upon an Eldari dig site upon the paradise world of Dawnbreak, engaging in a brutal battle alongside the Catachan Jungle Fighters Imperial Guard Regiment against the forces of Craftworld Alatok. Imperial forces crush the Eldari before the Iron Hands abscond with the relics that were unearthed by Alatok, leaving the remaining Imperial forces at the mercy of Eldari retaliation. 139 M41. The forces of Abaddon the Despoiler complete construction of the War Master's newest weapon, an immense and powerful warship known as the Planet Killer. 143 M41. The 12th Black Crusade begins. Abaddon the Despoiler leads a campaign throughout the Gothic sector, destroying dozens of worlds in the process. Abaddon's forces are eventually driven back by an allied Imperial and Eldari fleet, but over the course of the war, the War Master succeeds in capturing 2 of the legendary Blackstone fortresses. 392 M41. The Makarian Crusade begins, led by the legendary military commander, Lord Solar Macarius. Over 1,000 worlds within the Segmentum Pacificus are made compliant and brought into the fold of the Imperium, conquered at breakneck speed. 399 M41. Lord Solar Macarius perishes, possibly due to the actions of an Imperial assassin, and with his death, the event known as the Macarian Heresy begins. Macarius' 7 generals abandon their oaths of loyalty and begin combating against one another in an attempt to expand their own miniature empires. 405 M41. The Dark Angels chapter attempts to suppress the civil wars erupting as a result of the Macarian Heresy. The chapter's Ravenwing Company discovers a high amount of activity relating to the Fallen, including the enigmatic being known as Cypher. The Dark Angels seek to capture multiple fallen angels during the Lythanos uprisings, but due to a chance encounter and subsequent disagreements with the Space Wolves chapter, many of the Fallen manage to escape capture. 444 M41. The First War for Armageddon begins. Numerous cult uprisings begin to erupt throughout the multiple hive complexes of the Imperial world of Armageddon. These uprisings would quickly be quashed upon the continent of Armageddon Secundus, but the revolt upon Armageddon Primus would continue to pose a problem for Imperial forces. These cults would pave the way for the arrival of hundreds of warbands belonging to the World Eater's Traitor Legion, led by their demonic Primarch, Angron, launching a full-scale assault upon the world, accompanied by scores of demonic creatures. Logan Grimnar and the Space Wolves of his Great Company move quickly to provide aid to Imperial defenders. Angron is forced to delay his assaults to erect monuments to the Chaos Gods in order to provide him and his demonic forces the power to remain within the material realm. The Primarch, accompanied by his bloodthirster bodyguards, would eventually launch an assault upon the hives of Hell's Reach and Infernus, but Imperial forces barely manage to hold the line. Grimnar then unleashes his trump card, a full company of Grey Knights waiting in orbit. Angron would be banished back into the warp, but only 13 Grey Knights would survive the encounter. Following the banishment of the Primarch, the forces of Chaos would be swiftly defeated, but a cold war ensues between the Space Wolves and the Inquisition over the treatment of Armageddon's civilian population. 500 M41. Thousands of individuals throughout the Imperium begin to suffer visions of the Emperor of Mankind weeping. All instinctively know that the Emperor sheds tears not for his own suffering, but weeps for all mankind. 635 M41. The Shrine World of Piety is dragged into warp space after becoming enveloped by a warp storm. 651 M41. Commander Puretide is born upon the Tau Sept world of Dalith. Puretide would go on to become a legendary commander during the Tau Empire's second sphere of expansion. 672 M41. The number of warp storms erupting throughout Segmentum Tempestus increases suddenly and exponentially. Psykers within the Orpheus sector begin suffering from prophetic visions and nightmares regarding a future rising darkness. The Inquisition works tirelessly to suppress all knowledge of this endemic. 692 M41. A mysterious void ship that was constructed from an unknown metal, known to Imperial forces as the Angelus Boat, is discovered buried deep within the surface of an unknown world. The Angelus Boat activates without warning before travelling into the depths of space. Imperial scholars would later speculate on whether or not this craft was Necron in origin. 731 M41. Commander Puretide is crippled in battle and retires. Following his death, an advanced AI engram is developed by the Tau of the Earth caste to act as a mentor to future Fire Warriors. 738 M41. The Space Marine chapters of the 26th Founding are established. 742 M41. The Damocles Crusade begins. The Imperium launches an assault against the Tau to halt the expansion of the Tau Empire and reaffirm their claim over the Damocles Gulf. The conflict causes heavy losses on both sides, but the Tau are forced to retreat for the time being. 745 M41. High Fleet Behemoth enters the eastern fringes of the galaxy, having been attracted into the galaxy by the Pharos beacon over 10,000 years ago, and the world of Tyran is scoured of all life by the Xenos. Inquisitor Cryptman of the Ordo Xenos recovers Adeptus Mechanicus security footage, discovering the identity of the Xenos that assaulted Tyran. The race is henceforth known as the Tyranids, in memory of that now lifeless world. The High Fleet's arrival instigates the First Tyrannic War. The homeworld of the Ultramarines chapter is besieged by this new Xenos threat. Genestealers are officially recognized as belonging to this new and terrifying race. The Damocles Crusade is ended out of necessity, and the Imperium signs a truce with the Tau Empire in order to withdraw their forces to redeploy them against the greater threat of the Tyranids. High Fleet Behemoth is eventually defeated during the Battle for Macragge, but the entire First Company of the Ultramarines chapter is destroyed during the battle. 754 M41. After learning that Genestealers are a part of the Tyranid race, the Salamanders chapter purges the moon of Imgal, where the creatures were first discovered, of all life. 755 M41. The single largest Imperial crusade since the days of Lord Solar Macarius is launched in order to liberate the Sabbat worlds within Segmentum Pacificus from the forces of Chaos. This crusade, led by Warmaster Slado, would become known appropriately enough as the Sabbat Worlds Crusade. 757 M41. The disease known as the Zombie Plague is first documented upon the world of Hydra Minoris, having been unleashed upon the world by Typhus, the Herald of Nurgle. The world would then be quarantined before its entire population would eventually succumb to the effects of the plague. 760 M41. A Tau military force led by Commander Farsight recaptures much of the Tau territory lost during the Damocles Crusade. As Farsight's forces battle against the Orcs upon the world of Arthas Moloch, Farsight becomes one of the first Tau to encounter demonic entities, after a Chaos Gate was activated. The demons are eventually driven back by Farsight's forces after the Tau commander acquires a mysterious sword known as the Dawn Blade, but all accompanying ethereals were killed during the battle. Farsight is ordered to return to the Tau Empire, but refuses, angered that the ethereal caste had kept the knowledge of chaos hidden from their people. Farsight instead consolidates his forces and establishes what would become known as the Farsight Enclaves, before going into hiding as a hermit, believing himself to be a danger to the greater good. The Tau Empire, under Ethereal Supreme Aunvar, declares him dead and suppresses all support for their former commander. 765 M41. Slado, the Warmaster of the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, is slain upon the world of Balhort. 766 M41. Eldari Corsairs under the command of Prince Iriel launch a series of raids within the Ryza and Catachan systems, targeting several Imperial outposts and leaving the systems effectively blind for several decades to come. 772 M41. Vulcan Heshtan, the Forge Father of the Salamanders chapter, defeats the Eldari Corsair Prince, Ayeth Bloodweaver. In doing so, the Salamanders recover a chapter artifact known as the Gauntlet of the Forge, a device that was created by their Primarch Vulcan himself, and that Heshtan has wielded personally ever since. 777 M41. The Black Legion leads an assault upon the Cadian Gate, attempting to break through into the wider Imperium. The Traitor Legion forces, however, are eventually driven back into the Eye of Terror thanks to the combined efforts of the Cadian Shock Troopers Imperial Guard Regiment and the Imperial Fists Space Marine chapter. 797 M41. The Ultramarine Second Company, led by Chapter Master Marnius Calgar, defend the world of Zalathras from an Orc invasion. Calgar is said to have single-handedly held the gates of the world's capital by himself for an entire day and night. The Ultramarines eventually launch a counterattack and defeat the Orcs. 799 M41. The Ultramarines begin to reinforce the eastern borders of the realm of Ultramar against the encroaching Tau Empire. 801 M41. Hive Fleet Naga enters the eastern fringes of the galaxy. The psychic beacon of the Astronomicon briefly flickers and sputters. This results in countless thousands of ships becoming forever lost within the depths of the warp. 804 M41. Cardinal Astra Borgia dies of old age upon the world of Vrax Prime, and his apprentice Zayfan is chosen to act as his successor. Over the next few years, Zayfan begins whipping the population of Vrax Prime up into a frenzy of religious zealotry. 810 M41. Civil unrest begins to unfold with greater and greater intensity upon the world of Vrax Prime, culminating with the Order Hereticus's failed assassination of Cardinal Astral Zayfan. In desperation, the Departamento Munitorum requests urgent and immediate relief. 812 M41. Hive Fleet Naga is destroyed by a combined assault by the Eldari craft worlds of Iandan, Malantai, and Idare. A mycetic spore launched by one of Naga's hive ships would make its way to Malantai, disgorging numerous tyrannid organisms. While the Craftworld's defenders focused on eliminating the synapse creatures, such as the hive tyrants and warrior bioforms, an unusual zoanthrope specimen would begin to feed upon the souls located within the Craftworld's infinity circuit. By the time the Eldari realized what was happening, the zoanthrope had grown so powerful that it would go on to devastate the entire Craftworld single-handedly, earning it the name of the Doom of Malantai. Imperial forces begin amassing within the Vrax system. 813 M41. The Siege of Rax begins. The Death Corps of Krieg Imperial Guard Regiment begins to bombard the defense lines of the fortresses of Rax with heavy artillery. The first infantry battle begins soon after, lasting for 3 consecutive days, with neither side able to gain an advantage over the other. The Necrons of the Sortek dynasty completely eradicate the Tau colony upon the world of Canavar, claiming the world for themselves. 814 M41. Death Corps forces succeed at securing a breakthrough on Vrax during the Battle of Fort A453, driving the defending forces back. 815 M41. The Tau Sept world of Dalith comes under assault from the forces of the Orc war boss, Grog Ironteeth. The Tau forces receive unexpected aid from the forces of the Farsight Enclaves. 820 M41. The Siege of Rax continues. Reports surface that traitor Legion Astartes from the Alpha Legion, under the command of the Chaos Lord Arcos the Faithless, have appeared to throw their support behind the renegades. 821 M41. The Dark Angels chapter arrives within the Vrax system to provide reinforcement to Imperial forces. Azrael personally leads an assault that destroys the starport upon the world of Vrax Prime. Other members of the Unforgiven begin to make their entry within the Vrax system around this time. 822 M41. Abaddon the Despoiler leads an assault upon the maiden world of Eldanara to obtain an artifact known as the Skull of Kurnagar. The Eldari of Craftworld Alatok are able to drive Abaddon's forces from the world, but the Despoiler succeeds in obtaining the relic. 823 M41. An enormous Chaos fleet succeeds in breaching the Imperial blockade within the Vrax system, and delivers a substantial amount of reinforcements to the traitors upon Vrax Prime, including Heretic Astartes and traitor Titan legions. 827 M41. the Grey Knights chapter arrives within the Vrax system to provide Imperial forces a way to combat the increasing amount of demonic activity upon Vrax Prime. The Inquisitorial Lord, Hector Rex of the Ordo Malleus, assumes overall command. The battle for Hangman's Hill takes place soon after. 830 M41. At the request of Inquisitor Rex, 400 Astartes from the Red Scorpions chapter land upon Vrax Prime to assist Imperial forces. The battle for the Cardinal Gate takes place, where Inquisitor Rex succeeds in banishing the bloodthirster Angrath. Astartes forces launch an assault upon the citadel of Vrax, and the fleet of the Angels of Absolution chapter destroys the flagship of Arcos the Faithless, preventing the Chaos Lord from escaping. Arcos makes a last stand and kills Chapter Master Yafnir of the Angels of Absolution, but is eventually defeated and taken prisoner by the Dark Angels' interrogator chaplain, Belphegor. The Grey Knights discover a warp portal within the crypts of the Citadel. The warp rift is successfully destroyed, and the Grey Knights succeed in banishing the Demon Prince, Uraka Azbaramael. The Siege of Rax officially comes to an end a few weeks later. The aftermath of the war reveals that the world has been completely devastated and its population wiped out. The world is then subsequently quarantined by the Inquisition. 832 M41. An Orc war led by the war boss Driller Killer invades the Periliac system, launching a full-scale assault upon the world of Periliac Prime. The Deathwing Company of the Dark Angels chapter deploys en masse, not to Periliac Prime, but to the moon of the nearby world of Minoria. The moon's inhabitants are either slain or taken prisoner by the Deathwing, who proceed to ignore all requests from Periliac Prime to help the world's defenders make a stand against the Orcs. 835 M41. The Shrine World of Piety re-emerges from warp space, now transformed into a demon world. The Sororitas of the Order of the Sacred Rose launch a crusade to recover the sacred artifacts that still remain locked away within the Reliquary of Hope, one of the few locations upon the world that is yet to be corrupted by chaotic taint. The Order's canoness, Soraya, would personally lead an assault into the labyrinth beneath, and the Sisters of Battle would fight for 3 straight days before Soraya and 2 Celestians were able to fall back to the surface with a number of artifacts in tow. The Sororitas then managed to retreat into orbit mere moments before a fleet of the Grey Knights chapter of the Adeptus Astartes translates into the system. The Astartes then bombard Piety with cyclonic torpedoes, destroying the world utterly. 841 M41. The operational strength of the Ultramarines chapter's first company finally exceeds 50% strength for the first time since the Battle of Macragge. 845 M41. In Genis, Imperial Warmaster during the Dimmermac campaign is captured by a force of Drukhari raiders. This prompts the Imperium to assign bodyguards to all future Warmasters to prevent similar such events from occurring again. The reasons as to why Warmaster in Genis lacked bodyguards of any kind to begin with are never addressed. 850 M41. The Ordo Xenos branch of the Inquisition begins to conduct classified research into the biology of various tyrannid organisms upon the world of Beta Anthelion IV, in hopes of discovering a weakness that the Imperium can exploit against the High Fleets. This research becomes known in Inquisitorial records as the Anthelion Project. Contact with the research facility is soon lost, and the Inquisitor Solomon Locke leads an investigation comprising of elements from the Astra Militarum, Adeptus Mechanicus, and the Red Scorpion Space Marine chapter. The world had become completely overrun by tyrannid organisms that had breached containment, evolved, and multiplied, and the Imperial investigation team begins to suffer horrendous casualties during the ensuing battles. The Red Scorpions eventually receive orders to evacuate the world, leaving Locke and the remainder of his forces to perish. All contact is lost with the world shortly thereafter. 855 M41. An Orc war led by war boss Zanzag launches an assault upon the world of Black Reach. Distress calls sent from the world are answered by an Ultramarine strike force led by Captain Cato Sicarius, who eventually succeeded in slaying the war boss. With the death of Zanzag, the Ultramarines leave the world's planetary defense forces to finish eliminating the remaining Orcs upon the world. 871 M41. A combined Raven Guard and White Scars force liberates the world of Quintus from the demon prince Voldorius. Corsair Khan of the White Scars 3rd Company defeats the demon prince in single combat, and returns to the White Scars fortress monastery of Quanzhou with the demon's severed head as a trophy. 878 M41. A force of pirates and traitor legion Astartes, led by the demon prince Makar, conquer a multitude of uninhabited worlds along the borders of the Ultramar Empire. This leads to the Battle of Halimar Rift, where Ultramarines' forces, led by Cato Sicarius, succeed in destroying the majority of this pirate fleet, and Makar retreats into the warp. 883 M41. The Cadian 423rd Regiment of the Astra Militarum manages to decimate a traitor Titan legion, almost destroying it completely during a battle on the Planus Steppes, in the largest armoured conflict since the Battle of Talon. Imperial forces lose over 8,000 tank companies in the process. 886 M41. The Ecclesiarchy sends envoys to Fenris, the homeworld of the Space Wolves Space Marine chapter, due to reports surfacing of unsanctioned worship and rituals being performed by the chapter. This leads to a 3-week-long conflict between the Astartes and 3 orders of the Adepta Sororitas, though the Ecclesiarchy is eventually forced to withdraw. 888 M41. The Black Templars chapter launches the Crusade of Wrath, and becomes successful in reclaiming many worlds near the Maelstrom Warp Rift from the Word-Bearer's Traitor Legion. The entirety of the Ultramarines chapter travels to the world of Comrath in order to defend the tomb of an ancient Ultramarines hero named Aura from the Eldari of multiple craft worlds, who had sought to obtain an artifact known as the Scepter of Galaxian. Chapter Master Manius Calgar succeeds in slaying an avatar of Cain in single combat, causing the Eldari to retreat. The scepter is then taken by the Ultramarines, where it is locked away within the Fortress of Hera upon Macragge. 895 M41. An Orc war led by warboss Grimtusk Bloodboiler is crushed by the combined actions of Eldari Aspect Warriors and the Space Wolves. Celebrations are cut short, however, as the former allies begin to open fire upon one another due to a simple mistranslation. 897 M41. The Imperium officially makes first contact with the Necron race, when a Necron warhost suddenly and swiftly destroys an Adepta Sororitas convent within the Vidar sector, at a location known as Sanctuary 101. The organisms of High Fleet Colossus invade the world of Thresiax. The Wolf Lord, Bran Redmore, deploys a pair of Grey Hunter squads to defend the world's sole spaceport in order to buy the civilian population the time needed to evacuate. High Fleet Gorgon begins to cut a swath of destruction across the expanse of the Tau Empire. Over the course of the next 6 years, the Tau would form a truce with the forces of the Imperium, and the bulk of Gorgon's forces would be destroyed during the Battle of Kelishan, with the truce between the Imperium and the Tau Empire coming to an end shortly thereafter. 898 M41. The Necrons of the Aerotech dynasty acquire a shard of the Catan known as the Void Dragon from the maiden world of Silentia. The Void Dragon Shard eventually manages to escape and all but destroys the Aerotech as the C'tan Shard laid waste to dozens of worlds. The Shard would eventually be recaptured by the surviving Cryptex of the Aerotech dynasty. 899 M41. One of the earliest confirmed and detailed conflicts between the Imperium and the Necrons occurs during the Battle of Carrion Deep, where the Executioner Space Marine chapter investigated what they perceived to be a distress signal upon the world. Less than 30% of the chapter's forces managed to escape the carnage. 901 M41. The Death Guard Traitor Legion, led by the Demon Prince Mortarion, clashes with the Grey Knights chapter upon the world of Cornovin. Mortarion manages to slay Garoniton, the Supreme Grandmaster of the chapter, during the course of the battle, causing the Grey Knights to temporarily withdraw. Kaldor Drago is appointed as the new Supreme Grandmaster of the chapter, and the Grey Knights would meet the Death Guard once more upon the field of battle. Drago would banish the Demon Primarch back into the warp, following the Grey Knight uttering the demon's true name and carving the name of his predecessor into Mortarion's very heart, destroying the Primarch's physical form. Mortarion would not forget this insult, and swears to one day have his revenge. The Astral Claws chapter of the Adeptus Astartes begins an open revolt against the Imperium. When an Imperial investigation team is dispatched to the chapter's homeworld of Badab Primaris, the fleet is destroyed by the Space Marines. Luft Huron, the chapter master of the Astral Claws, christens himself as the Tyrant of Badab and officially secedes from the Imperium. This then leads to the events of the Badab War. 903 M41. A combined Tau and Astra Militarum force destroys the Tyranids of Hive Fleet Gorgon. The Lamenters, Mantis Warriors, and Executioner Space Marine chapters ally themselves with the Astral Claws for the cause of the Badab War. 904 M41. The Secessionist Mantis Warriors chapter captures a supply vessel belonging to the Loyalist Firehawks chapter, prompting the Firehawks to violently retaliate. This is considered by many to mark the official commencement of hostilities in the Badab War. 905 M41. The Marines Errant chapter is recalled from the Eastern Fringes to aid Loyalist forces during the Badab War, primarily tasked with escorting various supply convoys instead of assaulting Huron's forces. An Orquar led by war boss Biglug invades and ultimately overruns the Iron Warriors' fortress world of Castellax. 906 M41. The Red Scorpions and Minotaurs chapters are dispatched by Imperial authorities to help suppress the Astral Claws revolt. Varan Tortis, the chapter master of the Red Scorpions, is assassinated by an unknown party during an attempted negotiation process between the Loyalists and Secessionists. Sartak, the chapter master of the Mantis Warriors, is also killed during this incident, further increasing the hostilities between the two forces. These series of events are later blamed upon Luft Huron. Karab Kuln becomes the new chapter master of the Red Scorpions. The Howling Griffins and Sons of Medusa chapters are deployed to further aid Imperial forces. 907 M41. Multiple Orc incursions occurring throughout Ultima Segmentum necessitates in the redeployment of multiple Space Marine chapters from the Badab War Zone in order to deal with the Xenos threat. The responsibilities of these chapters are then assumed by the Imperial Navy. Badab is eventually blockaded, and the homeworlds of the Mantis Warrior and Executioner chapters are investigated by Imperial forces. 908 M41. The majority of the Lamenters chapter is ambushed by Loyalist forces, primarily from the Minotaurs chapter, and the chapter suffers heavy losses. The Lamenters ultimately surrender to the Loyalists. Imperial forces begin launching a series of assaults upon the numerous strongholds of the Astral Claws. The world of Badab Primaris is eventually surrounded and cut off from reinforcement and supplies. 912 M41. The Astral Claw stronghold known as the Palace of Thorns is subjected to a final devastating assault by Loyalist forces. Luft Huron is severely injured and flees into the depths of the Maelstrom along with the surviving 200 battle brothers of the Astral Claws chapter, signifying the end of the Badab War. Once in the Maelstrom, the Astral Claws eventually become Chaos Space Marines known as the Red Corsairs, with Luft Huron taking the name of Huron Blackheart. The Mantis Warriors, Lamenters, and Executioners are all placed on trial for their crimes against the Imperium. While guilty of heresy, their crimes were not considered irredeemable, and the chapters would be granted the Emperor's forgiveness subject to undertaking a century-long crusade of penitence. The three chapters are stripped of their homeworlds and forbidden from recruiting new aspirants into their respective chapters until the completion of their respective crusades. The Necron Lord upon the tomb world of Borsis is overthrown by one of his rivals. This new lord, seeking to expand his own personal empire, orders the activation of a massive planetoid-sized voidcraft known as the World Engine. 915 M41. The Inquisition-aligned chapter of the Adeptus Astartes known as the Red Hunters are dispatched to monitor the actions of the Lamenters, Executioners, and Mantis Warriors during the course of their crusades. 926 M41. The Necron World Engine begins to cut a swath of destruction throughout the Vidar subsector. Imperial forces dispatch 15 Space Marine chapters in an attempt to counter this threat, but are unable to breach the construct's void shields. The World Engine would finally be destroyed thanks to the heroic sacrifice of the Astral Knights chapter. A monument is erected to honor each and every slain member of the Astral Knights upon the lifeless world of Safehold, where it continues to be guarded until this day by volunteers from those chapters who fought alongside the Astral Knights. Multiple regiments of Catachan jungle fighters are deployed to the world of Dol Malin to combat against Orcish invaders. The Catachan 2nd, led by Colonel Ironhand Strachan, are the only regiment to survive planetfall. Strachan then orchestrates a year-long guerrilla war against the Orcs. Strachan and his men eventually succeed in destroying the main Orc settlement, with Imperial reinforcements arriving just 2 days later to finish the war and largely take credit for its success. 928 M41. The Eldari Phoenix Lord, Karandras the Shadow Hunter, and the fallen Phoenix Lord, Ahra, duel day and night for 17 days within a set of ancient ruins upon Xandros. Circa 932 M41. An orc known as Gazgul Magorok Thraka is critically injured upon the world of Urk by a warrior from an unknown Space Marine chapter, with most of his brain being pulped by a bolt round. The pain boy known as Mad Doc Krotznik finds the injured orc and replaces part of the boy's cranium with a bionic prosthesis. Gazgul would begin to claim that he was now able to communicate with the orc gods of Kork and Mork, and begins his rise to power. 935 M41. The Demon Prince Makar re-emerges from warp space with a massive demonic horde at his command. The world of Calf's orbital star fort, Indomitable, is captured by Makar's forces. Marnius Kalgar and the warriors of the Ultramarines' First Company board the fort and succeed in defeating the Demon Prince. Makar is bound within the warp core of the Indomitable, and the star fort is set adrift, with half of the Ultramarines' Fifth Company being stationed to act as Makar's jailers. 936 M41. The hive world of Darondi withholds tithes from the High Lords of Terror. Representatives from the Departmentum Unitorum, alongside the Death Corps of Krieg, are sent to investigate. but the officials from the Munitorum are lynched by the local population. In response, the Death Corps spend the next decade subjecting the cities of Durondi to unrelenting and devastating artillery bombardments, despite the Durondian government surrendering 5 years into the bombardment. Circa 938 M41. Ghazghkull Thraka becomes the war boss of his tribe. The Orc then delivers a great speech when a Space Hulk appears in orbit of his dying planet, convincing the 4 rival tribes of Urk to join him in a great war. The Orcs of Urk become united under Ghazghkull's rule. War Ghazghkull then begins to make its journey through the warp upon the Space Hulk, battling demonic entities for fun along the way. 939 M41. Commissar Sebastian Yarek is attached to the 70th Luther McIntyre Imperial Guard Regiment, who are dispatched to deal with multiple Orc incursions throughout Segmentum Solar. Upon the world of Varun, Imperial forces capture at least one greenskin prisoner, and Yarek would begin to learn the Orcoid language from them. Naberius, the chapter master of the Dark Angels, is slain during an ambush orchestrated by the traitor legions, and his corpse is taken as a trophy. Azrael is named as his successor and leads the warriors of the Deathwing Company to recover Naberius's body. 941 M41. The Second War for Armageddon begins. The Orc warlord Ghazghkull Magurk Thraka leads a massive war upon the world of Armageddon. Commissar Sebastian Yarek urges the planetary governor Hermann von Strab to request aid against the Orc horde, due to Ghazghkull being no mere run-of-the-mill war boss. Von Strab refuses and banishes Yarek to Hades' Hive for his insolence. The Orcs eventually begin to overwhelm Imperial forces, overrunning the entire continent of Armageddon Prime before their progress begins to slow at Hades' Hive. The defenders of Hades' Hive, under Commissar Yarek's leadership, delay the Orc advance long enough for Imperial reinforcements from the Blood Angels, Ultramarines, and Salamander Space Marine chapters to arrive and turn the tide against the Orcs, though the Commissar is gravely wounded in the process. Ghazghkull is initially presumed dead, but is later discovered to have survived. Commissar Yarek vows to hunt down and finally slay the Orc warlord. 946 M41. In the aftermath of the Second Armageddon War, several monitoring stations are established within the Armageddon system, named Yarek, Dante, and Mannheim after 3 great heroes of the war: Commissar Yarek, Chapter Master Dante of the Blood Angels, and Princeps Mannheim of the Legio Metallica Titan Legion. 959 M41. Abaddon the Despoiler allies with Huron Blackheart and his Red Corsairs to launch an invasion of the death world of Pandorax in search of an ancient artifact known as the Damnation Cache. Imperial forces from the Catachan Jungle Fighters Imperial Guard Regiment and the Space Marines of the Dark Angel and Grey Knights chapters mount a valiant defense of the world. Abaddon would succeed in activating the artifact, opening a portal into the realm of chaos itself, allowing demonic entities to invade the world. The Grey Knights would eventually succeed in recapturing and sealing away the Damnation Cache, and the Traitor Legion forces would be driven from the world. Abaddon, however, would manage to capture the legendary warrior known as Epimetheus, one of the original Grand Masters of the Grey Knights chapter. 963 M41. The Firehawks chapter mobilizes to reinforce the Crow's World sector against Eldari raiders. However, while en route to the system, the entire chapter vanishes within the depths of warp space and is eventually deemed lost. The Ultramarines chapter and forces from the Tau Empire clash upon the world of Malbadi. During the course of the conflict, an unknown Necron tomb complex under the surface of the planet reactivates the slumbering Necrons within, who begin to attack both the Ultramarines and the Tau, prompting them to join forces against this new mutual threat. The Tau succeed in evacuating their colonists before the Ultramarines enact Exterminatus upon the world, with Chapter Master Martinez Calgar allowing them to evacuate due to their aid in the battle. 964 M41. Captain Darnaf Lysander of the Imperial Fists escapes from his incarceration upon the Iron Warriors fortress world of Maladrax, though his chapter becomes concerned by the possibility of Lysander becoming tainted by chaotic corruption. Lysander would be deemed free of taint and able to return to duty almost a year later. 966 M41. Lysander returns to Maladrax at the head of an Imperial Fist strike force in order to purge the world of the Iron Warriors. 968 M41. Anti-Imperial insurgents rise up upon the agri-world of Kai'Zan and succeed in capturing most of the major population centers in a single night. The Astra Militarum dispatches a number of Imperial Guard regiments to intervene. Within a month, the world is brought back fully into the fold of the Imperium, though 90% of the Imperial Guard forces dispatched to retake the world were wiped out in the process. 969 M41. The Death Guard warship known as the Terminus Est is spotted within the Kando system. A few months later, the entire system suffers from a mass outbreak of the zombie plague. 970 M41. Belicas, the homeworld of the second incarnation of the Emperor's Sword Space Marine chapter, is revealed to be a Necron tomb world. The Necrons upon the world awaken and subsequently slaughter all human life upon the world, resulting in the annihilation of the Emperor's Swords chapter. 971 M41. The Orc speed freak known as Wazdaka Gutsmech begins making plans for a super highway that would allow him to ride his bike through warp space. 972 M41. Tectonic shifts upon the world of Damnos begin rousing the dormant Necron population upon the world from their long slumber. 973 M41. The Necrons upon Damnos begin to awaken en masse and begin to slaughter the human population. The Ultramarine Second Company, led by Captain Cato Sicarius, responds to an astropathic call for aid and immediately set course for the Damnos system. The Ultramarines battle fiercely against the Necrons, and would attempt to cripple the Xenos by eliminating the Necron Lord leading the Horde. Sicarius would be severely wounded in his duel with the Necron Lord, but the Necron would be slain in turn by the venerable dreadnought Agrippan. Eventually, the Ultramarines are forced to evacuate from the world, due to over half of the Ultramarine Second Company being slain or grievously wounded, and the numbers of the Necrons being seemingly limitless. The world ultimately falls under total Necron control. 975 M41. A squad of Cadian White Shields, led by Ursakar Creed, takes part in the Drussite Crusade. Thanks to his natural cunning and tactical genius, Creed becomes promoted to the rank of captain following the aftermath of the campaign, despite starting it as a new conscript. The Eldari craft world of Lugganath suffers from an outbreak of the disease known as the Brittle Coma. In desperation, the seers of the craft world send astral projections of themselves into the garden of the plague god Nurgle in search of Isha, the goddess of healing. The souls of the seers, however, become lost within the realm of Nurgle. Commander Shadowsun leads the forces of the Tau Empire in a defense against a massive Orc war. Shadowsun's leadership would lead the Tau to victory against the Greenskins. 978 M41. Imperial forces led by Commissar Yarrick track the Orc warlord Ghazghkull Thraka to the world of Golgotha and launch an assault to slay the Greenskin tyrant. As Yarrick's forces battle against Ghazghkull's horde, Imperial forces are ambushed by a second Orc army, trapping them in a pincer movement. Yarrick's personal Baneblade super heavy tank, the Fortress of Arrogance, was destroyed, and Yarrick is captured by the Orcs. Yarrick, however, manages to escape a few weeks later, due to what are called mysterious circumstances, but it is believed that Ghazghkull released him due to wanting a proper fight when he returned to Armageddon. 980 M41. The Salamanders chapter of the Adeptus Astartes fights a fierce war against the Black Legion upon the world of Helatine. The Sororitas of the Order of the Ebon Chalice move to reinforce Imperial forces and begin to push back the traitors. The demon prince known as Gralastix is summoned, and with his aid, the Black Legion almost succeeds in defeating the forces of the Imperium. It is only thanks to the sudden appearance of Saint Celestine that the followers of Chaos are eventually defeated, with the living saint vanishing almost immediately following the battle. 983 M41. Thanks to the tactical brilliance of Ursarkar Creed, the Cadian 8th Regiment succeeds in halting a migration of the insidious Xenos known as the Hrud. 986 M41. Ghazghkull Thraka leads a band of Orc pirates to successfully destroy the Imperial battlecruiser known as the Radiant Way. 989 M41. An Orc war led by the self-proclaimed arch-arsonist Snagrod runs rampant through the Loki sector. The Orcs eventually invade Rin's world, the homeworld of the Crimson Fists chapter. During the invasion, the chapter is almost wiped out due to one of the planetary defense missiles inadvertently destroying the chapter's fortress monastery. The Orcs begin to overrun the world and slaughter its civilian population, while the remainder of the Crimson Fists desperately fought to protect the world's capital of New Rin City. The Orcs would eventually be defeated, thanks to the timely arrival of reinforcements from over half a dozen Space Marine chapters. 990 M41. The Drukhari noble Zorothriel of the Flaying Blade leads a hunting expedition upon the demon world of Kornax. During their hunt, the Drukhari capture a number of flesh hounds, including a 3-headed specimen known as Karanak, intent on bringing the Khornate's demons back for use in Comora's gladiatorial pits. However, Karanak would break free during transit, and after freeing its packmates, the demons would slaughter all of the Drukhari on board the ship. The Fire Lords chapter of the Adeptus Astartes launches an assault against the Necrons upon the world of Belikas. The Astartes succeed in annihilating all trace of the Xenos upon the world, avenging the loss of the second incarnation of the Emperor's Swords chapter. Circa 990 M41. Genestealers manage to infiltrate the world of Ikar 4, infecting a portion of the population and establishing a cult known simply as the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood would pretend to be a cult dedicated to the Emperor, fooling Imperial authorities for an undesignated period of time, though the planetary governor would refuse to allow members of the cult to be inducted into the world's planetary defense forces. The Brotherhood begin their insurgency following the construction of their cathedral, and the world of Ikar 4 is plunged into civil war. Inquisitor Agmar of the Ordo Hereticus investigates this cult uprising, and upon deducing the Brotherhood to be a Genestealer cult, requests assistance from the Ultramarine Space Marine chapter. The Ultramarines succeed in slaying the cult's patriarch, and the cult is presumed destroyed shortly thereafter. Agmar learns from several astropaths of a great disturbance within the warp, prompting him to warn the Inquisition that a massive Tyrannid hive fleet is en route. 991 M41. The Second Tyrannic War begins. The Sororitas of the Order of Our Martyred Lady reinforce Astra Militarum forces upon the cardinal world of Akassis against the Tyrannids of Hive Fleet Kraken. Kraken assaults as a nigh unstoppable mass and succeed in breaching the walls of the Ecclesiarchal Cathedral. Canoness Praxedes suffers a mortal wound from the swarm's Hive Tyrant, but before she perishes, Praxedes manages to single-handedly turn the tide of the battle by slaying the beast, crushing its skull with her power mace. With the death of the Hive Tyrant, the remainder of the Tyranids are swiftly dealt with by the remaining Sororitas and Guard forces. Circa 992 M41. Kraken makes its approach to Icar 4, causing hundreds, if not thousands of gene stealers that had somehow survived the purging of the Brotherhood to emerge from hiding. The Tyranids would begin to overrun the world, but the chapter master of the Ultramarines, Marneus Calgar, would rally the defending Imperial forces. Calgar would succeed in slaying the creature known as the Swarm Lord, driving the Tyranids into disarray and allowing them to be countered at every turn by Imperial forces. A splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Kraken assaults the Eldari craft world of Iyanden. This splinter causes untold devastation upon the craft world, slaying most of its population and even destroying its avatar of Cain. All life upon Iyanden would have been made extinct, were it not for the timely arrival of a Corsair fleet led by Prince Iriel, with Iriel personally slaying the commanding Hive Tyrant after taking up the weapon known as the Spear of Twilight. Sotha, the homeworld of the Scythes of the Emperor chapter, is scoured of all life by the bioforms of Kraken, and the surviving members of the chapter would make their last stand upon the world of Miral Prime, before becoming overwhelmed and consumed. The Lamenters chapter suffered devastating losses in their own battles with the Hive Fleet, only narrowly avoiding destruction during the course of the war. Kraken succeeds in devastating hundreds of planets before its onslaught is eventually halted, ending the Second Tyrannic War. 993 M41. The Iron Warrior's warsmith Vostok Pistonhand seizes control of the Dark Mechanicum Soulforge of Dizos. Vostok then begins using the world's soul forges to create countless numbers of demon engines, binding numerous demons within their construction. Offended by this arrogance, the ruinous powers dispatch legions of their demonic servants to put an end to the warsmith's ambitions, with the conflict lasting for over a month. With the death of Vostok, the demonic legions then turn upon each other, with the war still ongoing to this day. The Imperium and the forces of the Tau Empire battle upon the strategically important world of Nimbosa. The Tau succeed in obtaining a strong grip upon the world, forcing the Imperium to request additional reinforcements from the Astra Militarum. This eventually leads to the Koloth Gorge Massacre, where the Tau slaughtered Imperial troops with such barbarism and brutality that their commander, known as Brightsword, is forced to return to the world of Tau to answer for the atrocities committed during the conflict. 995 M41. A mysterious being identifying itself as the Voice of the Emperor appears within the Agrippina system. This figure, speculated to be the fallen angel known as Cypher, begins spreading discontent and anarchy throughout the system, eventually resulting in the system's population launching an open revolt against the Adeptus Administratum. The Red Corsairs launch an assault against a combined Space Wolf and Deathhawk strike force stationed within orbit of the world of Perenzes. Huron Blackheart captures the Space Wolf strike cruiser Wolf of Fenris after personally slaying its commander Neil Bluetooth in single combat. The Tyranids of Hive Fleet Jormungandr enter the Milky Way galaxy from the galactic northeast. The Astartes of the Death Spectres and Honored Sons chapter form the spear tip for the Imperium's defense against the Swarm. 996 M41. A splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Jormungandr is destroyed during the Battle of Goyen Valley by the 18th Valhallan Ice Warriors Imperial Guard Regiment. The Dark Angels chapter investigate a distress signal coming from the hives of Deganian 13. As the Dark Angels make their way into the hive, they are beset upon by a Gene Stealer brood. The Ravenwing Company succeeds in slaying the Broodlord, allowing the rest of the chapter to purge the hives of the Xenos. The chapter then has the world marked to be tested for further corruption. 997 M41. The Tau Empire begins its third sphere of expansion, led by Commander Shadowsun, who had been in stasis during the Farsight expedition and awakened by Ethereal Supreme Aun-Va. The Sept world of Kasimi-En is established and used as a staging ground for the duration of the campaign. Hive Fleet Medusa enters the Milky Way galaxy via the region of space known as the Ghoul Stars. The Officio Assassinorum dispatches agents to slay the mysterious Voice of the Emperor, though the assassins fail in their mission. The planetary governor of Ferrite Mons jokingly extends an invitation for the handmaidens of Slaanesh to join him at one of his many opulent feasts. His invitation is accepted, and over 100,000 demonettes begin to manifest upon the world. Several regiments of the Vestroyan Firstborn attempt to purge the world of demonic activity, but ultimately fail. Hive Fleet Leviathan begins to enter the galaxy from beneath the galactic plane, and begins to cut a swath of destruction throughout Segmentum Solar, Segmentum Tempestus, and Ultima Segmentum. Unlike previous Hive Fleets, Leviathan has split its forces in two. The Iron Warriors Traitor Legion defends their stronghold world of Forgefane from the beasts of Leviathan. The Heretic Astartes muster an impressive defense, but are overrun after several weeks of intense fighting. A tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan is destroyed by the combined efforts of the Ultramarines and Mortificators chapters during the Battle of Tarsus Ultra. The Orc warlords Ghazghkull Maguruk Thraka and Nazdreg Ug Urdgrub join forces to launch an assault upon the world of Piscina 4, taking the defenders by surprise thanks to Nazdreg's teleporter technology, built by the mech-boy Orchimedes. The Orcs attempt to seize control of the power stations within the world's capital of Calidus Harbour, but the warriors of the Dark Angel's Third Company, led by Company Master Belial, manage to keep the Orcs at bay long enough to receive reinforcement. The Orcs are eventually forced to retreat, but Ghazghkull has already moved on to his next campaign with Orchimedes and the knowledge of the teleporters. 998 M41. A force of Cadian shock troopers are deployed upon the world of Golgotha in order to retrieve the remains of Commissar Yarek's personal Baneblade, the Fortress of Arrogance. Though the Cadians suffer multiple casualties, they succeed in recovering the tank, which is then swiftly repaired by the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Third War for Armageddon begins. York warlord Ghazghkull Maguruk Thraka invades the Armageddon system at the head of a massive Orc war, with his ships outnumbering the defending Imperial Navy by 6-1. Imperial forces under the command of Commissar Yarek begin preparing for the inevitable Orc assault, with the Imperium dispatching numerous Astra Militarum regiments, Titan legions, and orders of the Adeptus Sororitas alongside 20 chapters of the Adeptus Astartes to reinforce the world. The Black Templars chapter mounts a formidable defense of Hive Hell's Reach, denying it to the Orcs, though Hive Acheron would fall quickly to Ghazghkull's horde thanks to the treason of the former planetary governor, Hermann von Strab. Yarek, named as Supreme Commander of Imperial forces during the war, would begin organizing various counteroffensives to push back the Orcs. Hermann von Strab would be hunted down and executed by the Penal Legion squad known as the Last Chancers. The war devolves into a stalemate, with neither side being able to gain the upper hand over the other. As the stalemate continued, Ghazghkull would grow bored and leave the Armageddon system, leaving his various knobs to continue the battle in his stead. Yarek and a force of Black Templars would also leave the world in order to pursue the Greenskin warlord. Despite this, more and more Orcs would continue flocking towards Armageddon for the prospect of battle, and the Imperium would continue to send reinforcements to prevent the world from falling. A splinter tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan invades the Cryptis system, where it is brought into conflict with the Blood Angels chapter and a newly awakened force of Necrons. Though the system is scoured by a Necron weapon known as the Starflame, the tendril is only stalled, and the Tyranids continue to advance. The world of Galdamor becomes the battleground for a war between the demonic legions of Khorne, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. As a result of this conflict, all life upon the world is rendered extinct. Orlis, the planetary governor of Taros, attempts to secede from the Imperium and defect to the Tau Empire. Upon learning of this, the Avenging Sons chapter of the Adeptus Astartes is dispatched to assassinate the planetary governor, though they fail in their mission and suffer heavy losses thanks to the warriors of the Tau Fire caste that were assigned to act as Orlis's bodyguards. A massive Imperial war host is then dispatched to exterminate the Tau and bring the world of Taros back into compliance. Both forces experience heavy casualties during the course of the campaign, and the Imperium is forced to withdraw, leaving the Tau in possession of the world. The Tau then proceed to rename the world to Taros, and begin utilizing it as a mining station. 999 M41. The hive world of Narrades falls victim to a massive demonic incursion. The demons quickly begin overrunning the world's planetary defense forces, though Imperial reinforcements arrive in the form of a Space Wolf Great Company under the command of Harold Deathwolf. The Space Wolves begin to steadily push their foes back, but the Astartes would eventually fall victim to a demonic ambush following the Battle of Hive Genos. Deathwolf's forces would have been wiped out were it not for the unexpected appearance of the Wulfen, bestial space wolves from the lost 13th Great Company. Following the conflict, the Wulfen was sent to Fenris to await the judgment of the Great Wolf, Logan Grimnar. This would lead towards the Space Wolves hunting the other members of the 13th Great Company before they could be discovered by the Inquisition. The Dark Angels chapter makes planetfall upon Narrades shortly after the conflict, in search of sacred relics known as the Seven Shadows. The demon known as the Changeling takes the form of an injured scout known as Arad, who would be interrogated by the chapter's librarians. The Changeling deceives the Dark Angels by convincing them that the Wulfen were demonic in nature, and that the Space Wolves themselves were tainted. This then prompted the Dark Angels to gather allies before setting course for the Fenris system, in order to destroy this supposed corruption. The mechanisms of the Golden Throne are shown to become more difficult to maintain, with some components becoming all but irreparable for the Adeptus Mechanicus. In desperation, an expedition into the Webway is launched by members of the Mechanicus and the Inquisition, with their destination being Camorra, the realm of the Drukhari. Once within Camorra, a dark bargain is then struck between the Inquisition and the Drukhari. A splinter tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan begins an invasion of the Octarius system, drawing the ire of the system's Orcish Empire. The fighting grows so intense that both the Tyranids and the Orcs reach a stalemate, with neither side able to best the other. The arrival of Ghazghkull Thraka, who had been flung through the warp after his withdrawal from Armageddon, changes the conflict for a time, but the Prophet of the War does not stay for long, instead continuing his mission from Gork and Mork to unite the Orcs in the Great War. Within Camorra, the bonds of the warp portal known as Kane's Gate begin to weaken. The Eldari Farseer, Eldrad Ulthran, convinces forces from Craftworlds Ulthwé and Saimhan to launch an assault upon the Imperial naval base upon the moon of Coheria. Once the attack is underway, Eldrad begins performing a ritual in an attempt to awaken Iniad, the Eldari god of the dead. A Deathwatch kill team would launch an assault upon Eldrad's forces, destabilizing the ritual, and Eldrad would be forced to flee as Coheria exploded. Iniad begins to stir within the warp at the exact moment that the gladiatrix Ivrain is slain within the gladiatorial pits of Camorra. This prompts Iniad to resurrect Ivrain, imbuing her with his power and transforming her into his emissary. This inadvertently causes an event known as the Disjunction, where demonic entities would begin to manifest within Camorra. With the aid of the mysterious swordsman known as the Vizarg, Ivrain would escape from Camorra during the confusion, and begin her quest to fully awaken Iniad, gathering a cadre of followers who would become known as the Inari. The siege of the Fenris system begins. The Alpha Legion succeeds in summoning a series of demonic rifts throughout the Fenris system, causing each of the system's worlds to become subjected to demonic invasion. As the Space Wolves succeed in finally scouring the demons from the system, the Dark Angels along with 14 other Space Marine chapters would transition into the system. Still intent on saving the Space Wolves from damnation, the Dark Angels commence an orbital bombardment of Fenris. Captain Stern of the Grey Knights and Wolf Lord Ragnar Blackmane would reveal the Changeling scheme, exposing the demon upon the bridge of the Dark Angels' fortress monastery of the Rock. The demon, seeking to spread knowledge of the Fallen, is eventually confronted and banished back into the warp, and the Dark Angels realize that the Space Wolves were not the true threat. Seeking to take advantage of the confusion, the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion launches simultaneous assaults upon the worlds of Fenris and Midgardia. The Thousand Suns conduct a ritual that succeeds in summoning their demonic Primarch, Magnus the Red, to the surface of Fenris, and the Primarch would use his sorcerous powers to begin tearing the planet apart. Midgardia becomes so corrupt and overwhelmed that it would be subjected to exterminatus. After several days of fighting, and the subsequent destruction of each nexus of power upon Fenris, only the Space Wolves' fortress monastery, the Fang, remains. Magnus would slay the Wolf Lord, Eager Lion Wolf, but Logan Grimnar would succeed in injuring the demon with the Axe Morkai, a weapon forged by Khorne himself and tempered by the rune priests of the chapter, and the Grey Knights would banish Magnus back into the warp along with his minions. The bulk of High Fleet's Leviathan invades the Baal system and lays siege to Baal, the homeworld of the Blood Angels chapter. The Blood Angels, along with the majority of their successor chapters, called back by Commander Dante, would mount a heroic defense of the world and its moons, though the Sons of Sanguinius would almost be made extinct as a result of Leviathan's assault. The 13th Black Crusade begins. Abaddon the Despoiler, with a host of heretic Astartes, Traitor Guard, and scores of demonic creatures at his command, launches an all-out offensive upon the imperial world of Cadia. The mass emergence of the forces of chaos from the warp causes ripples across the galaxy. The Necron Lord, Trazyn the Infinite, traces the source of these disturbances to Cadia, and makes his way to the world. The Iron Warrior's warsmith, Shontu, along with the demon prince, Baklaher, mounts a surprise assault upon the Imperial Fist's fortress ship, the Phalanx, intent on capturing it to launch an attack upon Terra. The Imperial Fists are vastly outnumbered by Traitor Legion forces, and prepare to make their last stand, before the ghostly warriors known as the Legion of the Damned manifest upon the Phalanx to reinforce the defenders. The forces of chaos are eventually defeated by the Loyalists, and both the Imperial Fists and the Legion of the Damned begin to make route for Cadia to aid Imperial forces. The Archmagus Dominus of the Adeptus Mechanicus, Belisarius Cawl, is prompted by the Harlequin Shadowseer, Salandri Veilwalker, to travel to the world of Elfanor. Upon this world, Cawl discovers objects similar to the infamous pylons of Cadia, before the Archmagos would also make his way to Cadia. The Eldari craft world of Biel-Tan comes under assault by mass demonic incursion. The demon known as the Mask succeeds in breaching the craft world's infinity circuit and attempts to destroy the craft world's very soul. Ivrain and her Inari followers from Camorra arrive at Biel-Tan and succeed in driving most of the demons back. Ivrain purges the Mask from the Infinity Circuit by summoning the Incarne, the avatar of Iniad, though many Eldari souls are sacrificed in the process. The Inari then begin journeying towards the moon of Clysus, where they would clash with Azek Ahriman and the Thousand Sons of his Prodigal Sons warband within the Webway. The majority of the Prodigal Sons would be destroyed, but Ahriman himself would escape. The craft world of Iyanden would become invaded by a demonic horde led by the demon prince Garalgugogor, and the Ynnari would arrive to reinforce the craft world. Prince Iriel would be slain by the demon prince, but the Eldari would prove victorious in the battle. Yvraine would use her powers to resurrect the Corsair prince, and his weapon, the Spear of Twilight, would be revealed to be a crone sword. The demon prince Ercanthos leads the initial assault upon Cadia's surface and attempts to capture the world's planetary shield generator. Saint Celestine makes her appearance upon the battlefield and banishes Ercanthos back into the warp. The Phalanx appears within the Cadia system and unleashes a storm of destruction upon the Black Legion's fleet, prompting the traitors to temporarily withdraw. Abaddon the Despoiler then vows to personally lead the next assault upon Cadia. Belisarius Cawl learns of Abaddon's intentions to destroy the Cadian pylons, in order to allow the energies of the warp to spread across the expanse of the galaxy. Trazyn the Infinite offers to aid Cawl in maintaining the pylons in order to prevent this, an offer which Cawl reluctantly accepts. Abaddon teleports into the command tower of Lord Castellan Ursakar Creed, seeking to render Imperial forces leaderless. Jaren Kell, Creed's right-hand man, sacrifices himself to allow Creed the time needed to evacuate. Trazyn activates a Tesseract Labyrinth that disgorges numerous Imperial specimens from his collection to reinforce the defenders. The pylons, now modified by Cawl and Trazyn, are reactivated soon after, causing the Legion of the Damned, Saint Celestine, demons, and psychers alike to begin losing their power, as the tides of the warp are slowly pushed back by the pylons. Creed and Abaddon face off in combat, though Creed is hideously outmatched, losing an arm in the process. Before the Despoiler could slay Creed, Saint Celestine would impale him with her blade, forcing him to retreat into orbit. In his anger, Abaddon crashes the remains of the Blackstone fortress, Will of Eternity, into the surface of Cadia, and combined with the firepower of the ship known as the Planet Killer, the world begins to fracture. Creed vanishes without a trace. Imperial forces are forced to abandon Cadia, as the world is slowly pulled into the warp. When Abaddon learns that Cawl is in possession of an artifact that could potentially turn the tide of the war, the Despoiler orders the Black Legion to pursue the Loyalists to Clasus. The Black Legion is forced to retreat thanks to the sudden appearance of the Ynnari, who guide the surviving Imperials into the webway and begin making their way towards Macragge, the homeworld of the Ultramarines. Abaddon learns from his sorcerers of the Loyalists' intended destination, and dispatches a fleet of traitor Legion Astartes to invade the realm of Ultramar, in order to prevent Cawl from completing his secret objective. The Emperor's Children Traitor Legion invades the world of Extremis 6. The sonic weaponry of the Emperor's Children causes mass destruction across the world, resulting in the death of billions. The Imperium would dispatch Astra Militarum forces from the Elysian Drop Troops, Harakoni Warhawks, and Atharic Seraphs regiments, though the Loyalist forces would be utterly destroyed thanks to the presence of the demon Primarch, Fulgrim. The realm of Ultramar suffers from a full-scale Traitor Legion invasion, after Abaddon the Despoiler was informed by his sorcerers of Belisarius Cawl's intentions to bring an unknown artifact to Macragge. Imperial survivors of the 13th Black Crusade emerge from the webway upon the shrine world of Lathis. After aiding an Ultramarines garrison force against the traitor legions, Saint Celestine convinces the Astartes to provide them passage to the world of Macragge. Once upon Macragge, Belisarius Cawl states to Chapter Master Marnius Calgar that he must be brought before the Primark Roboute Guilliman, whose mortally wounded form lies within a stasis field within the Temple of Correction. Cawl then reveals his intentions, and the existence of a specially crafted suit of power armor that the Archmagus Dominus intends to use to heal the Primarch of his wounds, a task he can now accomplish in conjunction with the powers over life and death demonstrated by Yvraine, the emissary of Iniad. Call's intentions provoke outrage amongst the Ultramarines officers, Calgar in particular, but thanks to Chief Librarian Varro Tigerius, Call's entourage is allowed to enter the Shrine of Guilliman. As Call begins his work, the Shrine of Guilliman is besieged by warriors of the Black Legion who desperately attempt to prevent the Archmagus from completing his mission. The stasis field is deactivated by Yvraine, allowing Call to envelop Guilliman's body in an auto-reliquary that would begin encasing the Primarch within the experimental life support systems of the Armor of Fate. Imperial forces desperately try to hold back the traitors, but quickly find themselves becoming overwhelmed. Guilliman then awakens, fully armed and ready for battle. Guilliman's presence bolsters the efforts of the Loyalists and inspires terror within the traitors, and the Primarch cuts a swath of destruction through the Black Legion forces, leaving none alive within the Temple of Correction. Guilliman then orchestrates a devastating counterattack, forcing the traitors to withdraw from the Ultramar system. Following the aftermath of the conflict, Guilliman is briefly brought up to speed by the Loyalists regarding the current state of the galaxy, though the Primarch is shocked, even appalled, by what his father's Imperium has become. The Primarch declares that he must journey to the Imperial throne world of Terra, thus beginning the Terran Crusade. Over the course of this crusade, Guilliman's forces would not only increase substantially in size, but would succeed in reclaiming several worlds that had fallen to the predations of chaos. The warp would begin to grow more and more unstable, as the Chaos Gods themselves attempted to prevent Guilliman from reaching Terra. The Primarch's forces would be ambushed along the edge of the warp space rift known as the Maelstrom by the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion, led by the demon Primarch Magnus the Red. Magnus would use his sorceress abilities to drag Guilliman's fleet into the Maelstrom, destroying a number of Imperial ships that failed to erect their Gilla fields in time. Once within the Maelstrom, the Imperial fleet would be assaulted by the Red Corsairs, though the traitors would be repulsed. As they desperately sought for a route out of the Maelstrom, Guilliman's fleet would be assaulted time and time again by traitor Astartes and demons of the Chaos God Tzeentch. These ambushes took their toll, and the Imperials would eventually surrender to the Lord of Change, Kairos Fateweaver, in order to prevent the Primarch from being executed by the demon. The Imperials would then become imprisoned upon the Blackstone fortress belonging to the Chaos Lord Huron Blackheart. Fateweaver wished for the prisoners to be kept alive, seeing potential use in them, but the demon Scarbrand would lead a legion of Khornate demons against the fortress, seeking to claim the Primarch's skull for his master. In the ensuing confusion, Imperial forces would manage to escape from captivity and into a webway portal, thanks to the Eldari Harlequin, Salandri Veilwalker, and a number of fallen Dark Angels led by the mysterious being known as Cypher. Scarbrand would attempt to slay Guilliman, but the Primarch would succeed in banishing the demon, thanks to the sacrifice of the Black Templar's Marshal, Amalric. Within Komorrah, Kane's Gate shatters, allowing demons to flood the Dark City. After several months of fighting, Asdrubal Vect would intervene, organizing a massed counterattack that succeeds in driving the demons back through the remains of Kane's Gate, before severing it from the rest of Komorrah. Demonic entities would keep appearing within Komorrah, forcing Vect to sever more districts of the city from Komorrah, costing the Drukhari thousands of soldiers and slaves. Circa 999 M41 to 001 M42. The warp space rift known as the Cicatrix Maledictum is created, effectively splitting the galaxy in two. In the wake of the rift's creation, the Noctis Aeterna would occur, preventing the Astronomicon from being broadcast and making astropathic communications impossible for several weeks. Madness would begin to spread across Terra, and Trajan Valoris, the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, would recall the Sisters of Silence to Terra and request aid from the Grey Knight Space Marine chapter. 88 cohorts of Khornate demons would manifest upon Terra itself and lay siege to the Imperial Palace, leading to the Battle of Lion's Gate, also known as the Second Battle of Terra. Guilliman's forces would emerge from the webway upon Luna, Terra's moon. Before Veil Walker could seal the webway portal behind them, Magnus and the Thousand Suns would emerge from the portal. A fierce battle would erupt, and Guilliman would be almost overwhelmed by the Demon Primarch's sorceress abilities, but the Imperials would claim victory thanks to the timely arrival of Sol's naval fleet, warriors from the Imperial Fists, and a small number of Custodes and Sisters of Silence. Magnus would be driven back into the webway portal by Guilliman, allowing Veil Walker to seal the gate. The remaining Thousand Suns would mysteriously vanish. Guilliman's forces travelled to the Imperial Palace, and would aid the Custodes in defeating the horde of Khornate demons before they could breach the Eternity Gate. Following the battle, the Primarch would demand entry to the Emperor's throne room in order to converse with his father. Shield Captain Adronatus would grant him access on the condition that he do so alone. Cypher and his fallen angels were taken into custody by the Custodes, but Cypher would escape his incarceration within a week. Guilliman would spend many days and nights in the Emperor's presence, before finally re-emerging from the throne room. The Primarch then decrees that the Imperium is facing its darkest days, and becomes the new Lord Commander of the Imperium. And that concludes the bulk of the Warhammer 40,000 timeline. If you liked this video, consider supporting us on Patreon for more content. To those who are new to 40k, we hope you learnt something. So leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.